Put your red shirt on and they don't talk to. Everybody's doing the food. We got just one drink that we rule them all. Cookie fruit, remember your thoughts. At your Uru fingers and your middle guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Usually when still it will get you to come. To the big tank. To the big tank. The Rocky Mountain big tank. To the big tank. The Rocky Mountain big tank.
Okay, so there we go. So let's begin. Like I said before, we've got our Star Trek Adventures team right here. This is Van. That's past Van. Over there is Luna. Down below me is Brent, and over there in the corner is Joe. So there we go. So okay. So Joe, when you're ready, take it away.
Can you authorize my screen share?
I can add to screen.
Beautiful. All right. I'm having a little bit of audio trouble, but is everybody hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you okay. I'm not hearing Guy that well.
Same.
Here, let me turn my volume all the way up.
That's much better.
Yes, that's probably the problem is that I was hearing an echo earlier, and I thought it was my side, so I turned my board down.
Okay,
it's all good. We'll edit that out in post. It'll be fine.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. So I think what we're doing today is a tutorial on Modiphius Star Trek Adventures 2D20 system. Can somebody put up a character sheet?
I'll put up a character sheet for you.
And let's make the character sheet primary, if you would be so kind, because
yes.
I think I'll start talking about that first.
Okie dokie. Hang on real quick. You were like, hey, will you put a character sheet up? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Then I'm not in the folder. So it's all good. I'll put up Tasara's character sheet because that's perfectly acceptable.
And it also has a cool picture of you.
Well, there is that. Except that I have to figure out what season I had my Tasara's character sheet. You know what? Is it okay if I put yours up, Luna?
Sure.
Okay. Let's do that. That's a little bit easier, so I'll share that.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
All right, can we zoom in?
I don't know if I can. I may not be able to do both of them at the same time. Sorry.
That's fine. That's okay. That's perfect. All right. Shall I get started?
Yeah, go on ahead.
Absolutely.
2D20 is Modiphius's own game mechanic system. They use it for Star Trek Adventures. They also have a Conan the Barbarian. They have a Cthulhu setting. They have a John Carter of Mars and several other things out there. And all of them use this 2D20. So the basic system is going to take an attribute and a discipline, combine them to generate a target number, and then see how many successes you get. And you're always going to roll 2 dice, hence the 2D20 system. But you may need, in order to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve, more than 2 successes. So sometimes as many as 5. And we'll talk about how you can get there as we move on. I'm going to start with just the base mechanic, how to perform a task. And every task starts with an attribute and a discipline. Which attribute and discipline apply is up to the GM based on what you're doing at the moment. So I'm going to use a very simple example of, I'm going to say that this character, Zolarina Giraffe, is trying to decode a alien transmission that's in code. And she's trying to figure out what it says. And the GM decides that that's going to be reason, which is essentially your logic, combined with science, essentially her ability to perform scientific tasks. So her reason is 12, and her science is 5. We're going to add those two together. 12 plus 5 is 17. So remember, her target number is 17. Guy, can you switch now to the dice? Okay, so she's going to roll 2d20, and every die that rolls at 17 or lower gets her a success. So with this roll, she achieved 2 successes. The 16 is below 17. The 8 is below 17. She got 2 successes. That's the base mechanic for tasks right there. I am going to throw a couple other things regarding tasks out. One of them is if you roll a 20, that is a critical failure. And that means bad. No, leave the character sheet up for a moment. I'm just finding the right dice rolls that I need. I'm sorry. Thank you. A critical failure means bad things happen to you or your character. Sometimes it's usually up to the GM. That might generate a thing called threat that we'll talk about later. Or the GM might simply apply a strange effect to you. The other thing that what the heck did I just do with Google? Thanks.
I watched your screen do that down there in the preview area, and I was like, wow, that was interesting.
I don't know what I did or how I did it, but that's okay. Anyway, the other thing is there are other ways to get more than one success. So I'm just trying to roll some dice to get the results I need here.
I know gamers like that.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
play
I
with
tell
them
you
anymore.
what, we're gonna stick to this roll right here. Okay. So before we switch cameras, we were rolling reason plus science. Look at this character's science is 5. Okay? And look at their focuses and notice that she has a focus in cryptology. And what she's trying to do is cryptology. So the player that's playing this character can say, hey, GM, I have a focus in cryptology. Does that apply to what I'm doing? And the GM says, why, yes, it does. So now switch to the die, if you would, please. Okay, so she rolls a 4 and an 8. Her science is 5. That was the discipline she was rolling. And she rolled a 4. That's lower than 5, and she has the discipline. So because she has the discipline, anything under the, I apologize. Because she has the focus, anything that is under the discipline is 2 successes. So this die roll got her 3 successes. The 8 is under 17. That's 1 success. The 4 is under 5. That's 2 successes. These 2 dice total to get her 3 successes.
If I may, real quick,
please,
just to make it a little bit easier to kind of understand the comprehension of what's going on, because that one really threw me in the very beginning, and I didn't quite understand it. So what it really boils down to is the 8 is a success because it's under 17. The 4 is a success because it's under 17. The 4 is also another success because it's under the science cryptography. So because of that, she gets the extra success. When I first read that, I thought, I think that means that everybody has to roll under 5. I don't get it. So that's what that rolls down to. And I don't mean to add to the confusion there, but that's the way I finally sort of figured it out. Van has a question.
I just so for the let me look up so I don't get it wrong. So for disciplines, the max the discipline can be is 5. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for your attributes, what is the max an attribute can be?
12.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to clarify.
That's a good question. Okay, so there is another way that we can get extra successes, and that is if the dice roll a 1. Ooh, there's a 20. That's ugly. I'm not going to get a 1 now.
Oh my gosh, you've got some 19s in there.
Man, stop
Yeah.
rolling those dice, dude.
All right, well, I'm just going to give up. Let's pretend that I had rolled a 1. And the dice rolled a 1. Ones are always, whether you have an appropriate focus or not, get you an extra success. So if your roll is a 1 and a 19, you got 2 successes because the 1 is under the 17, so that's 1 success. And then the 1 is a 1, so that's a second success. And by the way, the dice that come with this game replace the 1s on the D20s with the Star Trek chevron, the Star Trek Delta chevron. So
Hoping that my camera will.
it's kind of in focus.
It's kind of in focus. You can kind
Yeah.
of
It's
see.
blurry, but I mean, it's a pretty recognizable symbol.
It
So
is.
Right.
Real quickly, I'd like to break in and say, hey, Dustin, welcome in. We're short enough players today that that we are going to just do a tutorial tonight instead of playing, because we're actually short a very critical player because Chelsea can't make it tonight, which was sort of a thing. So I'm just explaining that to Dustin because he's joining in on his lunch break. So
Excellent. Hi, Dustin.
how can we tell when people have been added to conversation? Or
if you
have
go
joined?
over here to comments on the side, on the right side it says comments. You can see where everybody, and they've got the icons depending on where they're coming in from. So Dustin's coming in on Facebook, Jimmy's coming in on Facebook, and so that's where they're coming in from. And you can see that if they come in from YouTube, they'll have the red icon and then the purple icon for Twitch.
Gotcha.
And that's something that's kind of important because actually I learned this one on my daily show. You might have some folks over on Twitch and some folks over on Facebook, and they're having 2 different conversations because they can't read each other's conversations. So we'll be cognizant of that.
So, in terms of what Joe was saying, as far as successes go, we were in a trial in which I'm trying to decrypt something. In terms of the show Star Trek, that would be something like the episode from Enterprise, where we've encountered a new language, and I've got to figure out what it is because the universal translator isn't that great yet. So this is an attempt to figure out what this new language is in time to then communicate back, which is why those successes might matter, that I need to get, say, 3 of them quickly as opposed to over an extended period of time, which will be something we discuss later.
Right. And one of the other things is your character has xenoanthropology as well. So you could give that a shot if you needed to as well, although they're both just going to bump your science.
Exactly.
But if you were to, let's say, as a side thought process here, one of them is hurt, then you might use xenoanthropology to try to get an extra success out of your medicine, although your medicine isn't that high. But if your medicine was high, then you might use your xenoanthropology for medicine, and then your cryptography to talk to them out of science. Which is why you'd want to make that negotiation with your GM. Can I use this? Is that a viable thing to use?
It's basically the player's responsibility to say, here I have this focus, and here's how it applies to what we're doing right now. And so I selected as an example a task that is directly, obviously connected to her cryptology. But if she didn't have cryptology and she was saying, well, I have xenoanthropology, couldn't that help me figure out how their language worked? That's a negotiation that the player has with the GM to figure it out, whether it'll apply or not. However, you can only ever really apply one focus to a die roll. Having 2 focuses doesn't get you anything more.
Which is one of the reasons that if you're the kind of person who is high speed, low drag when they make their character sheets, you might want to make your focuses talk to different disciplines.
Can you explain what high speed, low focus is?
Oh, high speed, low drag is a military term. It just means you're doing a lot. if you're the
Okay.
kind of person who maximizes min-max.
Min-max.
Min-max is the word I was
Okay,
looking for.
thank you.
Min-max.
Gotcha.
As a trill, I have another way of handling that, but I figure we'll go into that later because trill have a skill that allows you to switch out focuses.
Does that make it a trill skill?
We'll
I'm
get
just wondering.
yeah.
So,
We'll get to talents.
so this is like just as someone who hasn't played before, this sounds like probably the most open sandbox I've ever heard of with the game. So this game is more of a negotiation than it is a dice roll. Is that the best way to think of it? Okay.
There's a lot of negotiation in getting things done, and then there's negotiation in what does my dice roll mean?
Okay.
Because that's the whole thing about the focus is you're negotiating whether or not a focus works. And negotiation's maybe not the right term. You're trying to sell the GM on, does this work? And then they either say, yes, it works, or no, sorry, that's not going to apply.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to step on Joe here.
No, you're not.
A lot of games have always been this way. It's like I'm going to roll on my blah 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 skill to ride this horse. Oh, why don't you roll on your ride skill? Because my ride skill really sucks. So instead, I'm going to roll on my hang on skill instead to hang on to the horse. Oh, okay, I guess that'll work. That's been sort of an old thing we've done in role-playing games for 100 zillion years. Because my ride skill's a 2, and I'm never going to be able to ride the horse, and I know it. So, or whatever. So it's always been sort of that kind of thing. And it's the same thing here. It's just that it's formalized in this game.
Okay. That makes sense. That helps a lot because it makes the book look less intimidating.
Right.
It is kind of an intimidating book, but it's a great system.
I had said this before. Oh, sorry, Joe.
No, go ahead.
I keep stepping on you. I had said this before the show started, and I think it bears being said again. Star Trek Adventures is very much a cinematic game, not a rules-heavy game. They've been working very hard to be very cinematic. It's instead of when you fire your phaser, rolling to see which degree of arc the phaser fired at, you're just firing a phaser to see if you hit the guy. And it's very straightforward. Did you hit the guy? It doesn't matter that he's, 1 foot away or 7 feet away or 6 feet closer than the last time. All of that stuff's not important. You don't have to do all that math.
Okay.
So they make it a much more cinematic system, which I really like personally.
That's good because I'm terrible at math. So.
I am too.
If you can add a number that's 12 or lower to a number that's 5 or lower, and you can count successes up to 5, you're okay.
It depends on if they're odd numbers.
Yeah.
I want to check my math.
You may need a calculator. All right. So remember I said that you had to have a certain number of successes based on how hard the task is? If I didn't, these tasks all have a difficulty, and the GM determines what it is. It could be as low as 0 or as high as 5. So if you have a bad guy is tied up and completely immobile, and you're trying to put a hypo in them, you could have a difficulty 0 where you can roll 0 successes and still succeed. And most gamers would not bother to roll, but sometimes you can manipulate the game system. So GMs will have you roll a 0 success task in order to generate something called momentum, which we'll talk about in a little bit. What I want to focus on right now is what happens if I'm doing something super difficult and I need 5 successes. And the best I could hope for is to roll 2 1s, which would only generate 4 successes. How do I succeed at that task? Well, there are a couple of ways that you can add dice to your roll. Guy, can you give me the dice back?
I can give you the dice back.
We're going to talk in a little bit about how to earn momentum. But if we have momentum in the pool, you can spend momentum, and that will get you another die. So I'm trying to do something really hard. And I'm going to spend 1 momentum, and now I get to roll 3 dice. So I could generate potentially up to 6 successes with those 3 dice. Another thing that I can do to add another die is I can spend threat. Threat is like momentum for the bad guys. I give the GM this threat, and the GM can use it later to make the bad guys work better. That'll give me a 4th die.
Where is how much momentum you have listed on the sheet?
It is not on your character sheet because it's a group pool.
Right.
Oh. And we're going to talk about momentum in a totally another section in just a minute.
Okay.
Because it has a whole bunch of stuff that applies to it.
Okay.
But right now I just want people to know that for a task, you can add a die by spending a momentum if you have it, or you can add a die by giving the GM threat that he can spend later or she can spend later. And the last way you can add a die is by using determination, which we'll have a section on determination. So you can end up rolling 5 dice. And if our target number was 10, well, I've generated 3 successes with these 5 dice. I could potentially have generated as many as 6 successes with these 5 dice, depending on what my attribute and my discipline are. So that's how you can succeed in those tasks that have a high difficulty.
Wait, I probably missed something, but so if you rolled, I know this statistically is nigh and impossible, but if you rolled 1s on all of them, wouldn't that be 10 successes? Or are you talking about are you talking about using your focus?
No, he's talking about what's on the board.
What's on the board? There's no focus being applied.
There's no 1s on the board, so since there's no aces on the board, there's no dupes on that. So
okay,
let me see if I can roll 5 more dice, because I spent a threat and a momentum and a determination.
Okay.
Whatever the dice rolled, this die, if I had a focus, the number 3, if I had a focus that gave me a discipline below that was 3 or higher, that could be 2 successes on that die.
Okay.
This one's probably going to be a failure. That one's probably going to be just 1 success. So
Okay.
you could potentially generate as many as 10 successes with 5 dice.
But but using focuses, you're only allowed to use your focus on 1 die. Like, let's say
No,
I
It applies to the entire roll.
Okay, so like, let's say I had one that was at a 5. Every single below 5 I rolled would be a double.
Correct.
Okay, damn. All right, cool.
So those focuses are very powerful.
Ooh, botchies. That 20 would hurt a little bit.
So let's say you had a focus to this die roll, and let's say your target number is 13, but your related discipline is 5. So we are looking at 2, 4, 6 successes. You get a success, a double success, and a double success. Does that make sense?
It does. Am I allowed to ask for help from anybody when I do this?
Yeah.
There is assisting, and that's a section we will cover in a little bit.
Awesome.
Joe, you may want to state what you're pointing to, because we can't actually see your
Oh, is okay, I'm sorry.
the mouse doesn't show up.
The mouse doesn't show up. All right. Well, let me throw another example up there.
Oh, we got an ace.
We got an
Yay.
ace.
Okay.
So that die that rolled a 1, no matter whether you have a focus or not, that's going to give you 2 successes. Let me change some of these die rolls here. That's not helpful.
Quick question, because this is one I've never been clear on. If I have a focus and I roll a 1, is that 3 successes or just 2?
It's just 2.
Yeah, it's always
A
just
single
2.
die can never generate more than 2 successes. That's a good question.
That
Okay,
is a good
so
question.
let's use this die roll as an example and say our target number was 15 and our discipline was 5, and we do have a focus that applies. So we are now looking at 7 successes. The 2 is below the discipline, so that die gets 2 successes. Where's my camera? The 5 is below or equal to or below, so that gets 2 successes. The 6 gets 1, the other 6 gets 1, and the 11 gets 1. And we're looking at a total of 7 successes off of that roll. Is that making sense? Okay, and determination, I'm talking about giving you an extra die with determination, which we'll have to have a whole section on determination at the end.
Yeah, but
But
one
the
thing
point is-
I'm sorry, Joe. I was just going to, before we move on to this next point here, of course, with that roll, though, you have spent some of the group's resources for it, and you've incurred some potential trouble down the road, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So though you did manage to pull off those 7 successes, storyline-wise, we've sort of succeeded at stopping the warp core from blowing up, but we've also sort of incurred 12 more Klingons that have beamed aboard the ship.
Right.
So it's balancing the game out by the more you pull those resources in, you know. So that's
important to remember there's 3 ways to buy an extra die, and they all cost something. The first way is by spending momentum, which means that momentum is now gone. You've used it, and you don't have that resource to use next time. By adding threat, that means it's easier for the bad guys to do whatever they're going to do. And by spending determination, which is a whole different thing that we'll have to talk about in a little bit. Does somebody want to talk about what happens if we generate extra successes, or should I just plow on?
I can talk about that.
All right, go for it.
Assuming I've got this right. So if we generate extra successes, that is one of the ways, I believe, to generate momentum. You can also use it for extra cinematic effects. Or am I?
we're just trying to get a good set of rolls.
I have found that the dice of your appropriate color seem to be better. Nobody is orange, and that's the problem here.
So basically, you have momentum, or you have a difficulty level. The task needs 3 successes to succeed. And let's look at this die roll that generated more than 3. Wow, it just likes 16 and 17 today, doesn't it? All right, there we go. So let's say I've generated 4 successes, and I only needed 3 to do what I was doing. What happens to that extra success is it becomes a point of determination. I've just generated 1 determination. And either I can use it immediately. I can say, hey, GM, I want to spend this determination right now. I was trying to scan the nebula to detect the cloaked Romulan warbird, and I got an extra success. So I want to know more information.
Okay.
Is one of the things I can do with that determination. And the GM can go, okay, sure, I'll give you a little more. Or if there's nothing I want to do with it right this second, it generates 1 determination that goes into the group. Excuse me, I'm saying determination. This is momentum. I'm sorry. I've generated 1 momentum. It goes into the group pool that anyone on my team can use during that scene. And that's how we build up that. So if you think about we talked a little bit about rolling a difficulty 0 task. So I'm trying to give a hypospray to a tied up bad guy to knock him unconscious. He's tied up, he's immobile, there's no way I could fail. Well, what the heck? I'm going to roll 2 dice. Well, look, okay, maybe the 15 failed, but I got a success that I didn't need. Bingo, I just put a momentum in the momentum pool.
Okay.
And we may need that later. And that's the gist of momentum.
Should we
We've got a
talk
hand
about
up.
the potential negative of doing that, though?
Go ahead.
Hang on real quick. Van's got a question.
So, if the game master says, I don't want to give you more information right now, does that mean you get an extra momentum? Like, hey, I'm asking to use this momentum, and you said no, gimme. Or is it just like, well, we trust the GM, and it's not going to be extra because the GM's nice or whatever? Like, how does that work?
In the end, you have to trust the GM because it may be there's no information to give you that's available.
Okay.
So it just becomes determination, or it becomes momentum then.
It just goes into the pool.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will go into the pool.
So determination becomes momentum.
No, determination and momentum are different things. I'm so sorry that I kept using the wrong word.
So it's all momentum.
This is all momentum right now.
Yeah, it's all
Got
momentum.
We're good.
So-
Determination
Got
is a whole different thing.
As a side note, because of COVID, we're having to kind of do some fluctuations. This game has some, not what I would call tabletop elements, but usually the GM has a little like chit of some sort that they will toss at you, and this is your momentum,
Yeah.
and you keep these little things as a stack In the center of the table is the pool where all of the momentum is, and then your group is local for your determination. And so
Okay.
it's easier to remember it if you've got all these little pieces of plastic that move around the table like chips on a poker game, right?
Okay.
Because they look like this. So
Okay.
that's exactly what they're doing there is threat, momentum, and so it's a visual. You can see it. Unfortunately, we're in COVID times and none of us can be sitting at the same table. So we kind of have to make these all virtual.
Is there a do we just should I keep a spreadsheet open, or is someone else keeping a spreadsheet open? Like, what's the best way to make sure we all know who has the what momentum in the thing?
Well, you can keep I'm going to actually add the character sheet to the stream. There's actually a spot, I thought there was a spot.
There is on the newer sheet. This is the older one.
Oh, this is an older sheet. There's a newer sheet that has determination on it.
It's right at the bottom of values.
Right. So.
Look right at the bottom of values.
Oh yeah,
I
right
see
here, right
I
here.
see it.
But
Yeah.
that's
It is.
determination, not momentum.
Right.
But this is determination. For the momentum, since that's a group pool, the GM will just keep an eye on it, and we all can just try to keep an eye on it. And while we're playing here, it's a little harder, but that's all right. You're dealing with GMs who are willing to openly tell you you've got 5 determination, or I'm sorry, 5 momentum, and there you go. So you guys have 5 momentum you can spend, and we'll usually remind you in game. You know, oh yeah, you've got to do this very complicated thing. You got to have 3 successes. Let me remind you, you have 5 momentum in the pool. You know, something like that. So we'll tell you that stuff. We're not the type of GMs that like to play the ha ha ha. I have beaten my players. You know, that's not our style anyway.
Well, that's less fun for most people unless you're playing like Dungeons and Dragons 2.0.
Right. Exactly.
We also, as far as this specific format goes, we do have, when we're on Discord, typically a chat room. So we can put things like momentum in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's some other things you can do with momentum. I'm sorry, before I move on, did you have a question, V?
No, I was just nodding. It's like, yeah, that sounds great.
All right. So in addition to buying another die for your die roll, you can also spend momentum to do what's called creating an advantage. So that means you're going to spend the momentum and say, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if I had remembered to bring a phaser today? Or wouldn't it be nice if I happened to have the high, it just so happened that I was standing on a little bit of a hill and the Klingon was below me, so I had a little better target.
Sure.
And you can kind of use that to manipulate the situation there. You can also spend a momentum to remove a complication, but that costs you 2 momentum. And a complication is kind of a reverse advantage. And this is a section that I need to read a little bit better. But basically, sometimes things can go wrong, like when you roll a 20, it creates a complication. And that's things along the lines of, well, sure, you tried to shoot the Klingon and whatever, but you also tripped over a log and you fell on your face. Oh, I'm going to spend 2 momentum so I don't fall on my face, is kind of what removing a complication does.
Yeah, you stop the warp core, but it's going to blow up a warp nacelle anyway.
Right.
Okay.
So but that costs 2 determination to remove a complication.
Okay.
Momentum, not determination.
Jeez, I'm so sorry. Momentum.
But we're still
Please,
on
please,
momentum, right? So every time you say determination, I should just edit it, and he means momentum.
Yeah,
until
we'll
I
edit it
start
in
talking
post.
about determination for real.
Until
Cool.
we actually get to the section on values, he's not talking about determination.
It's okay. When we get to determination, he's going to start calling it momentum, and I'll just know to switch him. It's fine.
Good. Yeah, I hope I can do that.
I keep looking at Luna's character sheet now that we pointed out where determination is. I am hyper focused on that. So now whenever I say momentum, I look at the word determination and say determination. It's even worse.
And I am the cause of all this problem. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, viewers. There is one more thing you can spend momentum on, and that is called obtaining information. And that's basically asking the GM a question. And the GM will answer your question. And now there's a little bit of a negotiation that goes on there of how would my character learn this information, but you can just expend determination to get information.
Momentum.
Jeez, oh Pete. Expend momentum to get information out of the GM. The GM does have some ability to say there's no way your character could figure that out or find that out. I'm not going to let you make that spend. And in fairness, then you would not have spent the momentum. But that's 3 things you can do with momentum.
Right.
Add a d20 to your die roll.
Wait, I thought it was determination.
And no, I'm sorry, it's momentum. 3 things to do with momentum. Add a d20 to your die roll, create an advantage or remove a complication, and obtain information.
Right. So the obtain information, let me give an example of what you would do on this one. You're interrogating the Romulan spy, and he has told you where the location of whatever it is, and you did your roll to get the location, you did your interrogation roll. Well, you need to know where the location is, but maybe after that you're like, oh, I didn't think about this, but maybe I need to know how many people are guarding the door. That would be where you would want to just spend the momentum to get a little further into that interrogation. The roll already got you the interrogation. So you got the information of where the secret rebel base is, let's say. But knowing whether there are people there or not, or what people, or how many guards, or whatever, maybe you forgot to ask that. That would be a good time to use momentum.
So what about, I thought that, Joe, earlier, I thought you mentioned that when you rolled a 20, it's something bad. Like, is it a threat? Is that a thing?
So rolling
that's
a 20,
the way it's a crit fail, everything goes terrible.
it can create a complication. That's like, sure, you shot the Klingon, but you still fell on your face. Or I think rolling a 20 can also generate a threat. It's kind of the GM's call, what they want to do with that.
Okay.
Bad.
Well, actually,
Okay.
I think what Dustin's been doing is either it happens right away and you fell on your face, or nothing happened.
Yeah.
And he just puts the threat key
Oh.
over here. In other words, he's generated
no.
momentum effectively for the bad guys.
Yeah.
So your 20 has just put momentum on the bad
Oh.
guys.
Threat is
That's less.
the sort of scenes version of momentum. They
Right.
get to keep it
Oh.
to use to make it harder for us somewhere else in the scene.
It's
So-
the anti-momentum.
Right.
Yeah.
So later on, the Klingon is trying to shoot you, and he needs to get 3 successes, and he's only got 2 dice. Well, then he'll spend the threat to get his 3 dice. And
Shall
that's
we,
how
shall we
to
go into threat?
do what?
Shall we go into threat?
Yep. We
Who
can go
wants-
to threat.
Who wants to go?
You can keep. You're doing great. I just like to make snide comments.
The good news is I can keep track of the difference between threat and other things. So this
Right.
should be easier.
It won't be determine threat.
Right. So, first of all, threat is the anti-momentum. It is momentum for the bad guys, and it's also kind of a narrative element that the GM can use. So how do we get threat? Well, I can make a die roll and buy an extra die by giving the GM threat. Or the GM can just add threat because something really bad is happening. Sometimes you make a bad choice and the GM's like, I'm going to add a threat to the threat pool because you just did something really stupid. And basically, those are the 2 ways you get threat. But the bad guys spend threat the same way that you spend momentum. So they can add die rolls to or add d20s to their die rolls by spending threat, or they can create advantages for themselves by spending threat, or they can remove disadvantages for themselves by spending threat. And that's basically what threat is and does.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's basically threat and momentum are kind of in reverse, the nat 1 and the nat 20. Is that right? Roughly. I mean, momentum's more complicated than that, I understand, but like basically it's just take it and flip it on its head. If you get a 20, you're screwed and the GM's laughing in his corner. Is that about right? Yeah.
If you get a 20, it's going to either generate threat or generate a disadvantage. And that's the GM's call. if you get a 1 or you have a focus that applies and you're under your discipline, then you're going to get an extra success, which could become momentum. And
Got it.
momentum and threat are the same thing. They're really functionally, they're the same thing. It's just momentum helps you guys and threat helps your opponents.
Okay.
And I think that's threat. Does anybody else think we need to talk about anything else per threat?
No, I want to take a quick break to say that Geek Tank is sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Homes, Shiny Garden, and your mom. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
So, just wanted to go ahead and take a break real quick, talk about our sponsors, and we can return to the show.
How do we feel about talking about assisting others on tasks next?
That sounds like a good transition right there. Let's go to that.
Okay. So, does anybody want to cover that, or do you want me to just keep plowing on?
Keep plowing on, my friend. What I'm liking about this is you describe it, and then I try to make like an example out of it, which helps me understand it better, and sometimes helps other people understand it better. Because some of this stuff you're talking about, I'm like, oh crap, I've been doing it wrong. I've only been playing this game for 3 years, so. But now that I'm GMing, I'm like, I better get all this stuff squared away. So,
Right.
Part of this is I like being able to just kind of transform what you just said because it helps me remember it better. Some of it I know really well, and you're doing just fine. That's all good, and I'm making snarky comments. So,
Well, I like that too because I'm going to describe it one way, and you're going to describe it with slightly different wording, and one's going to click with somebody, and your way is going to click with somebody else. So
sounds
that's
fair.
good. Okay, and actually, I want to throw out there while we're between topics. We are a group as people watch Geek Tank and watch us play that is really fast and loose with the rules.
Yep.
That part of that is the nature of the people involved, that we're just players and GMs who like to play that way. And part of it is we learned this game on the fly as we were playing it. And so to some degree, we've generated some bad habits that are not using things the way they're supposed to be used. But I GM'd 2D20 Star Trek for a group of players who had never played. None of the players had ever played 2D20 before. Jimmy Adamson was in the game. You see him in the chat. And it went smooth as silk. It was no problem at all. They picked up on it pretty quick in gameplay. What things they didn't understand, I was able to say, here's what you need to roll. Here are your options. And it wasn't a problem. It was fine.
Yeah, it's and that's part of that is also that there, as we had, for those of you who've watched Geek Tank, you'll remember that we had Dan Peak on our show a while back, and he was talking about agency.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I think my cat is breaking things, so I'm just going to go on mute and I'm going to disappear for a minute. Sorry.
We'll see you in a moment.
No need to tell us that. You can just do that.
I wonder, should we give a 3-minute break?
We will in just a second here. I wanted to finish my thought real quick.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
B-Dan was on our show, Dan Peak, and he was talking about game mastering. And one of the things that he was talking about was agency and respect and sort of trust. And there was like a trust bond between all the players and the GM. If you're a GM who's playing with people you've never played with before, like you're at a convention or whatever, always good to follow all of the rules and do because they don't know you. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know what you're up to. All of the guys that are playing in our game, they know us. They know that even if we do start bending the rules or whatever, there's a reason for it. It's not just a, haha, we've killed Luna off again. None of that. It's because I know I really need Luna to not actually to have rolled a 20 right there, because boy, that would suck if she actually did set off the warp drive and blow up the entire ship. And she doesn't seem to want to be spending the momentum. And
this character's been through almost as worse.
Right? So
Yes,
and it's also a lot of knowing what your characters will do and what your players will do. One of the reasons we're not playing tonight is because I have one little thing, but it's critical, and it hinges on Chelsea. So I'm like, dang it, it's a critical piece, and it hinges on Chelsea. So,
well, we're missing half the group.
We're missing Nate. We're missing Chelsea. We're missing
Richard.
Richard. we are missing half our group. We're
Yeah.
missing Hunter. So we're missing quite a few people out of this game right now. So it's actually a perfect time to go through a tutorial. And frankly, I could stand to have a refresher on the rules. So
It's good
if
for all of
everybody
us.
wants to take a 3-minute break, we could do that. I don't know what we're going to do about broadcast on that. Nate's like, I'm here. Yes, but you're here. You're not. Do you want to join us up here on the show? Is that what you want to do? Because if you do, actually, that would be fine. I can just.
That would be cool. Come on, jump in, Nate.
Did you want to say
Also, Guy.
something?
Yeah, also, Guy, you also have to think about it too. You have 2 new people, myself, who's been following along, and also, can't
Dan.
remember her name. Yeah,
B.
new to the game, so it's always a good time to kind of go over everything and refresh it.
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
funny thing is, you guys new to the game think we actually know what we're doing. We
I know.
More than me. Yeah, I haven't played
I
almost
have-
20 years.
I've been playing for almost the same 3 years that Guy has, except for like 6 months when I just couldn't be here. And I didn't know these rules before tonight. So that tells you something.
That's fair, Nate. Nate is saying his computer is not up for the task.
Okay, that's fair.
So V, I've actually got I've got a kitten as well, and every so often I can hear him over there destroying something, and I'm like, yep, I got to go kill the kitten. I'll be back. Yeah.
Well, my kitten's 5 years old and is just kind of a jerk. I mean,
Oh,
she's
well, there's
not.
that.
She's a lovely snuggle bug. She's a very sweet cat. She just also has a penchant for breaking things.
Looks
My
easy.
10-year-old cat, fortunately, doesn't have that much of a penchant for breaking things, but she likes biting me.
There you go. Well, actually, Nate, it's probably good. You'd probably just sit here anyway if you were online. So just like Brent and V and Luna, we're just going to all like refresh the rules. Sounds like a great idea to me. So anyway, so we went ahead and did all of that. If anybody needs to take a break, now is the time to do it. So we'll take a quick break. And the problem is that we're already broadcasting live, so I don't
You
know
know what?
whether we should just pause or just kill the broadcast.
I will throw up something off of YouTube that's a Star Trek scene on my shared screen, and you can put that up, and there won't be any sound, but at least that'll give us something to look at while we're waiting.
Sounds good to me.
I was just going to show them pictures of my cats, but I guess this is fine.
Ooh, what are the gray uniforms from?
This is First Contact uniforms, or First Contact and Insurrection. So this uniform actually has been called back to, which is wonderful.
Hey, wait a minute. Didn't he play Will Riker?
Isn't that weird?
Is it him?
It is Will Riker. Yeah, this is.
Hey, wait a minute. I recognize him too.
Yes,
is
that's
this?
Geordi.
Yeah.
There's Geordi. And there's Riker. And this
Wait,
this
that
is
Data?
That's Data. This is from the movie Insurrection.
What?
Yep, this is the movie Insurrection. So, right there, you got Beverly Crusher and Deanna Troi on the planet with Data and Worf.
This is the J.J. Abrams universe, so it's
No.
hard to say whether we talk about it.
No,
Is
this
it?
is not. This is Prime Universe. This is normal universe.
Oh, okay. This is about them.
So
Insurrection was the movie that followed Generations and First Contact, and was before the movie Nemesis.
what year was that? Do you know what year was it made?
I want to say 99, maybe. I'll look it up for you.
Man, I love Next Generation so much. That was so good. Like, Deep Space Nine is fine, but man, the Next Generation. So good.
So let's see here.
I might have to watch Next Gen just so that the cards
98.
are making
Oh
sense.
man, I am good. 98.
You really are.
I was off by 1 year. That's it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, the first season of The Next Generation is a bit of a struggle bus, but I promise it gets so much better after that. Season 3 through the end are just like, I literally couldn't stop watching. It was amazing. The perfect binge watch for when the pandemic was happening. I absolutely adore it.
Right. So all of them are that way. I actually feel that way about Voyager. We call it the hair rule. So when Riker shaves or gets a beard in Next Gen, that's when it gets better. When Cisco finally shaves his head, it gets better. And when Janeway lets her hair down from that bun, that horrible bun, it gets better.
So when does it happen to Archer?
There's a reason why, only fourth season's really the best part of Enterprise.
I liked first season.
Yeah, I actually didn't mind first season and second season. Third season, I really didn't like the Xindi conflict.
Agree completely.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've gotten that far yet, so
It's all right. Stick to it. Watch third season, but know that fourth season is far better.
I mean,
Fourth season, my opinion, some of
also-
the best Star Trek ever made.
really like Discovery, so we know that I'm a weirdo.
Oh, I love Discovery. I absolutely love Discovery, and I
That
love
makes you
Picard. And I'm just such a Lower Decks nerd now. Lower Decks didn't actually have a bad episode, and I cannot believe that happened. But they didn't have a single bad episode.
I will be buying that probably in December, so I can watch everything.
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
gonna watch that one too. It's so timeline wise, does this take place pre or post Deep Space Nine?
This is during the fifth and sixth season of DS9. You notice that they went in DS9. They went to these uniforms.
Yeah, they did. That's why I kind of was curious about that.
Yeah, but this happened congruent to Dominion War.
Okay, yeah, got it.
It does make it a lot harder to tell who's part of what with these uniforms, though.
Yeah. But so that's where this is kind of going on there.
On the other hand, in my observation, they weren't always super consistent about where certain roles lied, like whether a communication officer would be yellow or blue, for example.
Well, and that the main ones are always the same, but it's always the auxiliary ones that are confusing. Who are war engineering for most of the time, but there was an episode or two where she was wearing command, and so it's kind of like questionable as to where she actually rolled out.
Yeah, and I feel like even earlier, I think it was science in Enterprise, so their uniforms aren't quite as based
Consistent.
on that.
Yeah, as in that Hoshi Sato was wearing blue. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and she was actually doing like linguistic science. So.
Right. She was doing sciences, so it made sense.
Bryn's back.
I would do a Next Generation watch party with you, Luna. I haven't watched it again because I only watched it 3 months ago, but I would watch it again.
Okay.
How much longer is this this clip there, Joe?
Looks like we have about a minute and a half left.
Okay.
But if everybody's back,
Well, I was going to go run and get some tea downstairs, but if we only have about a minute and a half, I don't want to.
Go tee up.
Control.
We can handle.
I'll start talking about assisting tasks if you want. Or
That's what I was
someone
about to
else-
say. I'll wait until we get out of this, then I'll go run and get my tea while you're assisting tasks.
Okay.
I love those phaser rifles. Those are first contact era phaser rifles. So pretty.
Has anyone here seen Picard?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 I've seen
Love
the
Picard.
first 2 episodes and I haven't watched any more. I like it so far. Does everyone else think it's online? It seems to be like a 50-50 thing. People are like, "Oh, it's terrible," or "It's amazing."
Well, so here's my take on this. There are people who are out against the Kurtzman treks. They don't like any of the Kurtzman treks.
You
They
have
don't
to
like
explain what that means.
Alex Kurtzman's the showrunner of Discovery, Picard, and Lower Decks.
Okay.
And so, as opposed to Rick Berman, who is the showrunner of TNG, DS9, and Voyager, and Enterprise. So there's like the Berman era treks, and now we're in the Kurtzman era treks. And it seems to be something that happens a lot because, like, for example, when I was younger, I really didn't like the Berman era treks for a while. So I'll go ahead and bring you out of this.
Oh, we
except I
don't need to watch an ad for Square? That would be good.
So, I don't know why I lost Joe completely.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if Joe
You
knows.
should kick him out.
He was like, I need to take a nap.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
I'm done. I'm finished.
I will let him know.
There
there
we
he
go.
Sorry.
I think I accidentally hit remove.
No,
and
it was my
removed you
fault.
as-
I
Oh.
tried to close I tried to close YouTube when I tried to close it on the wrong
Window.
screen. That was totally
So-
my fault.
I will finish real quickly my thought, and then I'll go get tea and let Joe move on. When I was a kid, I hated because I am 2 days younger than Will Wheaton.
Okay.
Like literally, he was born on July 28th, 1972, and I was born on July 31st, 1972. 29th. His July 29th, 72, and I am 2 days different than Wesley Crusher. So when you watch TNG, that's like how old I was, literally. And so I went through being a TOS only guy, just like Will Wheaton was. And then when I was 14, TNG came out. And so I was watching TNG, and I hated it, mostly because I was jealous of Will Wheaton. Because I could have been on the bridge of the Enterprise. Come on.
Right.
But then I hated Deep Space Nine because it was just a Babylon 5 knockoff. And then I hated Voyager because it was a Battlestar Galactica knockoff. And then I hated Enterprise because they just couldn't even remotely stick to canon. And, and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
With distance now, all of them are really good with the exception of Code of Honor and Naked Now and If Wishes Were Horses. Anyway, so there's a number of like episodes where you're like, ugh. But for the most part, I love all of the Berman treks, but I didn't get into them until like about third or fourth season. In fact, I didn't even watch Deep Space Nine until Trials and Tribulations when my mom called and said, how did they do this episode? Because like I said, my mom was a producer, but she was already out of the industry by that point. And so she called me up one night and she was like, how did they do this episode? I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you're not watching Star Trek? I am shocked. And so I pulled up Trials and Tribulations. That's a fourth season episode. And I started watching it. I'm like, wow, this got good. When did Worf get here? What's going on? So I had to go back and rewatch.
That was the Deep Space Nine episode.
Yeah.
That was so crazy. I was wondering that, and I watched that like a month ago. I was like, it looks so real. Like, it looks... I think the same thing. Like, how did they even do that? It's so cool.
There actually is a behind the scenes for all of that is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. But the long and the short of it is, I hated all the Berman treks. I hated Rick Berman. I hated Michael Piller. I hated the whole, all of that stuff. And then I finally realized about the Dominion War that no, this is actually really good, and there's actually good stuff here. And so I had to kind of get over myself. I have a feeling that we have a number of Trekkies that are that way about Kurtzman era Trek. It's all about it's too different. It's too changey. They've altered it. They've made it different. And that was what I was having with. I mean, we used to call Enterprise D the Enterprise Hilton because it just looked like a big stupid hotel. And we're like, why would you fly around in a hotel?
See, I was going to say offer a different theory on those, which is the original series and Next Gen are both action dramas. The drama is created by going to its location and having a thing happen. Picard and DS9 are both station dramas. They are in a location, and the people interaction is how the drama is created. Picard's a little bit of both, but it is largely a station drama. And
Yeah, it's all about the people.
There are people who get really uncomfortable switching between. If you're a fan of action drama, going to essentially what would be like the Lifetime TV version of Star Trek might not like that as much because it's more about people stories as opposed to action.
Okay.
And then my argument, my belief on Discovery actually has to do with tone because it is still an action drama, but it's no longer brightly lit. It's much more lit like a horror movie. And so the whole time you feel ominous by its lighting, and it makes people uncomfortable who don't know why they're feeling uncomfortable.
And they're actually drawing their tone from Generations and First Contact, which are the movies that were the first TNG movies.
That wouldn't be. I honestly think I don't care about who's making it, but I think one of the things that I like most about TNG and other Star Treks is I'm a very, very, very sensitive person, and so when you have a lot of violent action scenes and a lot of explosions and intense music, I don't like that very much, and so maybe I would not like the later stuff either, but not because I think it's bad. It just might not be my cup of tea.
Picard has some seriously brutal stuff in it.
Does it? How bad? Scale of 1 to 10.
It has some brutal stuff in it, but it's never lit as badly as Discovery. And so you don't necessarily, like in your kind of secret amygdala mind, feel as frightened when it happens in Picard as you do in Discovery, even though the actual thing that's happening is equally bad or possibly less bad in Discovery. It's bizarre, and it has to do with, which is why I say that is sort of the horror movie of Trek, not because it's a horror movie, but because it's lit like one, and it does some weird things to your brain.
That and they did some changes, some critical changes to the Klingons, which has made a whole bunch of people very mad. But the truth is, in Discovery. And of course, the truth is that they don't remember Star Trek the Motion Picture, which I do. I went to Star Trek the Motion Picture and saw 3 Klingon cruisers moving in on the cloud, on the V'ger cloud, and then cut to these weird guys with funny bumpy foreheads. And I'm like, those are Klingons? They don't remember that. I remember that.
There's a little bit of a difference, though, because at the point that happened, Klingons were just generic bad guys in TOS.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden we get into Next Gen and we get Klingons really richly defined. And so it's different to change them when we're filling in the gaps than it is to change them when we've got all the gaps filled in and people love the Klingons and we know about the Klingons, but now all of a sudden they're this whole other thing. Why don't you just make a new race? And so to that way it's not just that it changed, it's that you literally erased something that we love to make something new for no reason at all
whatsoever.
Well, and though I hear what Joe's saying, I disagree with him. I know that they were headed for something. Part of the problem that we had with Discovery Season 1 and 2 is that the writer's room kept getting changed. And I actually have a top-level thought process on why all Star Trek suck in the first couple of seasons.
Oh, because they change writers? Is that what happened?
Right. And what happens is you have a show, it's a flagship, they put it out there, and the suits won't leave them alone.
Oh.
So CBS's high executives are standing on the set with the writers, and then they're watching the internet and going, oh, they hate it. All of you are fired. Start over. And then they get a new set of writers in, and that happened to Voyager. And that happened to Deep Space Nine. No, it didn't happen to Deep Space Nine necessarily, but it happened to Next Gen, Voyager. I saw it happen with Enterprise, and actually the suits killed Enterprise ultimately because we were so noisy.
It happened twice to Enterprise.
Yep.
And the third iteration is when it got good, and it was too late now.
It was too late to fix it by then.
Yeah.
And then it's happening to Discovery as well. They're swapping out the writers' room. And
That's
what
right.
happens is you have people who are headed for a thing, and then they get fired. So they're no longer heading for a thing. They were, in Discovery, originally trying to link in the Klingon-human war that has been referred to in TOS many times. Because in TOS, the Klingons and the humans are in a Cold War. Because the Klingons were supposed to be our Russians, right?
Right.
But the idea was that they were going to make the Klingon-human war, which caused this war, which then went into a Cold War during TOS. And they were going to explain all of that, and then those writers got fired.
Oh. I thought the
And so-
Romulans were the Russians. Who are the Romulans?
The Romulans are because they're
Russians,
sneaky.
1960.
Okay.
KPG.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, from the 60s, yeah, you could see them with as that role, but now
Okay.
They were the sneaky spy versions of the Russians. The Klingons were the saber rattling mean version of the Russians.
Yes.
So you kind
The
of had
World War
the
One Russians?
it was like two different versions of the Russians. But
Okay. Okay.
anyway, so that's one of the reasons why certain shows like Deep Space Nine is really good, is because it was the redheaded stepchild. Nobody cared. And so they let Ira Stephen Bear stay in charge with Ron Moore, and they stayed in that show through almost all of it. So it has its rough spots in season 1, but it starts to settle down really nicely in season 2. But it stays true to, we are dealing with this religion that we have to deal with, and it stays true to, we're in Cardassian space with Bajorans who were occupied. And it stays true to those fundamental things. But if you look at like Discovery had a perfect out for their spore drive. They had an alien race that lives in the spores. And if for some reason you keep using the spore drive, you're going to kill all these people. That would have been a perfect out. But then they changed writers. And all of a sudden, yeah, what alien race? We don't care. It doesn't matter now. We'll just pretend like we don't know that the spore drive ever existed. Right?
That's one thing I have to give the third iteration of Enterprise some props on, is they did a really nice job of closing out the storylines that they didn't want to follow when they went into what they were going to do with the series.
Right. Which was the Xindi War. And so
The
they went
Xindi War and the Temporal Cold War, and they closed both of those out beautifully before they got into what they were doing in season 4, which was
Manny
what the
Koto.
show was supposed to be about in the first place.
Yeah,
Okay.
see, Manny Koto took over, and Manny Koto was what we call the original series Trekkie,
Mhm.
one of us old school Trekkies who got into Star Trek and TOS, and
Yep.
had been in Star Trek for. And so I knew when Manny Koto took over, I was like, oh, things are going to get good. And they did. He brought in Orions, he brought in Andorians, he brought in the Tellarites, he brought in all of the original series characters and started fleshing that out, which was.
We could absolutely talk about this for like an entire show, but we promised to go over rules, so
We did.
probably do.
And I want tea.
Go get your tea.
I'm going to go
Instead
get tea and
Go
turn this
get
back
tea
over to Joe.
instead of spilling all the tea.
Right.
Will you put up the character sheet again before you go?
I will do just that. But I
All
need
right.
to bring up the character sheet. There we go. Quirk. Do you need me
Yay,
to focus on a zone?
Yeah, zoom in on the attributes and the disciplines. And I don't care so much about anything else besides those two right now. That's
very-
beautiful.
very
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
I'll be
thank you,
back in a
guys.
sec.
Okay, so we are going to talk about how to assist another character. So let us pretend for a moment that we have a character who is, let's say they're trying to figure out what this alien that we found needs to eat. It's hungry, it's suffering, we're trying to feed it so we can make friends with it and work together with it. What do we feed it? And so you have a character who's trying to figure that out, and Luna's character is going to help them. So, Luna, what do you think your character can do to help them with that problem?
I think it wouldn't be my call, but I would think that would be possibly insight medicine. I'm not very good in medicine, but I do have some xenoanthropology.
Okay. So insight is kind of compassion and understanding of feelings and things like that. I'll buy that. I'll buy medicine as the appropriate skill. And let's say I'm a GM, I'll buy the xenoanthropology, that you can use that specialty to kind of recognize how, what this thing might eat. So sure. You have a focus that applies, and we're looking at a target number of 10. Insight 9 plus medicine 1 equals 10. We don't have the die roller up, but the way an assist works is you have to sell the GM on how you can help, and exactly what she just sold to me, which attributes, disciplines, and focuses apply. And then when you are, there's the person who's doing the main task. They're called the task leader. They make a task roll just like normal, just like we talked about before. Luna, as the assisting character, gets to roll 1 die based on her own attributes, not on the other character's attributes or disciplines, but based on hers. So Luna's going to roll 1 die against a target number of 10. And do you want to roll a die, or should I just have Google do it for me real quick?
You can just.
We can't show you the Google die roll, but Luna rolled a 17, which is more than 10. So she did not succeed in helping. But let's imagine that Luna had rolled a 5. Well, that is lower than 10, but not equal to or lower than her medicine score. So Luna adds 1 success to help whoever is doing the main task.
Okay.
And say the main character that's trying to figure that out it's a really difficult task, and it's difficulty 4. And they've got 3 successes. Luna adds 1. That brings us up to 4. They succeed.
And this actually brings up a really good example, because I didn't think of it till after. I had to state that I was using this because I have a background in xenoanthropology, but I might be able to say something, instead of using medicine, I might say something like, I think I could use science to analyze, say, its poop to figure out what it eats. And
Absolutely.
that would again be a negotiation I would have with the GM on how this would work.
It's all what you can. A lot of times, just for ease of gameplay, when the GM is coming up with a task, they'll say, okay, roll, control, and command. But it is part of player agency to be able to say to the GM, hey, can I instead use, just like Luna just did, hey, instead of insight and medicine, can I use insight and science? And here's why. And the GM is going to make a call. And he might say, well, this thing is so alien that you don't recognize what kind of hooves or feet it has, or you don't have any experience with that, and require you to use the medicine. But if you can sell the GM and it makes sense in the story, sure, absolutely, you could go to the science instead. And that gives her a target number of 14 instead of a target number of 10.
Okay.
Everybody good on assisting? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Easy helping character just rolls their own roll, but they only roll 1 die.
It also should be noted that you will get some extra jobs that can happen if you are in a position on a starship. So, for example, there are boosts and things like that from your captain. There are boosts from being the tactical officer. There are boosts from being the science officer, and things like that.
Okay.
There are cards for each character that we can give you that have the things that you can do in a scene. And it lays it out. It's really nice. I'm actually kind of bitter because on my Tessara character sheet that was on my previous computer that has decided to jump off a cliff, I actually had the character sheet and right next to it the tactical officer sheet, which gave you all of the things that she can do when she's the tactical officer. Now she's a captain, so she has a different sheet. So it's actually probably okay because but that's what it looks like right there.
Yeah, Joe's holding it up right now. I don't know if you want to.
Hey, I'll highlight you so you can see that.
Okay.
So that's the commanding officer. So you've got some minor actions, then you've got your tasks that you can do.
Okay.
And that's the things down here. So you can assist or pass or ready or override or direct or rally.
Okay.
Now the tasks are literally everything you can do in a round, so to speak, of the game, right? Like you can help another character, just like we're doing this here. You can pass and decide not to do anything. You can be ready, so they're waiting for a situation or event to occur. So this would be the thing about Adventures is that it doesn't have an initiative system the same way as like the initiative goes in a normal game. So when you talk about like things like, like if you're playing a D20 or let's say D&D. In D&D we say, roll initiative, and everybody rolls a 20-sided die and you add your agility score and all this stuff, and that gives you a number, and then whoever's got the highest number goes first, and then we just go down the line, right? That's a standard way of doing it. In Adventures, in this game, it's a much more cinematic thing. So
Okay.
what you can do is say, I'm waiting for the Klingons to enter the room. And everybody else will then go and do their things until the Klingons enter, at which time it's your turn. So you can say you're readying. So in other words, and it makes more sense cinematically, you're standing there with your phaser aimed at the door, and you're just waiting. That totally makes logical sense. And actually, the initiative system is one of those things, Joe, that I would love to have you explain.
Okay.
Because the initiative system is one that I'm fuzzy on at best.
It is pretty simple, hot potato. So basically the way it works is the GM will determine who goes first based on the narrative. If the bad guys surprise you, they're going to go first. Otherwise, the GM just kind of decides who gets to go first. But the players will have one player do one thing, and then it becomes the bad guy's turn, and one bad guy will do one thing. And then it goes back to the players. And it doesn't matter which player goes. The players can negotiate amongst themselves. I should go next, or it's really important that Luna goes before I go, so Luna should go next. It doesn't matter, and it's not up to the GM. It's simply hands back and forth, hot potato. Players go, one player goes, one bad guy goes. One player goes, one bad guy goes. There are some things when we get to talking about talents that will change that, but that's down the road. For the most part, it literally is a tennis match.
Yeah, so the part that I wasn't clear on was establishing the GM establishing an attack and or the players establishing who goes first.
You know what? Maybe I am not clear on that rule, but I think it's really just up to the GM who starts.
I think so too, because I think this is a very cinematic game, and that sounds like something that definitely fits the style of the game. To just say the GM decides whether you've been taken by surprise or not.
Yeah, and it works.
Okay.
You can see the Klingons coming down the road 7 miles away. Well, I guess we're going first then on this fight, because
Oh shoot, they just beamed in.
Oh my gosh, they beamed in on you and they're behind you. Oh no, now they go first.
Yeah.
Very cinematic on this.
Okay.
Well, we talked about complications. Shall we talk about opposed tasks?
Yep, we could do that.
Okay, so opposed tasks automatically begin as a difficulty of 1, although the GM can change that. And basically, you both sides of this conflict will determine the same way they normally do which attribute and discipline they're going to use and which focuses apply and how many dice they're going to roll, and then they roll. And whoever gets more successes wins is the short version of essentially their successes cancel each other out at a ratio of 1 to 1. Okay, here's a success for me and a success for you. They cancel, and we keep doing that until somebody has 0 left and someone else has successes left, and that's how many successes that person got when they win. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, good. That's it for opposed tasks. I think we are ready to go into values and determination unless there's something else we should be talking about. Oh, stress.
I was going to say probably stress and maybe talents before values, but
Yeah,
Talents.
I like talents versus focuses. We should talk about that too.
Okay. Talents are individual things that your character knows how to do. Unlike focuses, these are actually defined in the rule books. The core rule book has a bunch of talents, and then if you look at the sciences division or command division or operations division source books, they might have additional talents. Plus the beta quadrant, alpha quadrant, gamma quadrant, delta quadrant have additional talents as well.
Okay.
And some talents you can only get if you are of a particular race or the GM gives you a pass. Some talents you can only get if you are of a particular background, like there's only one way to get it, or the GM gives you a pass. So when you open the rule book, it will actually have a requirements section on the talents that will tell you what you have to do to qualify to have that talent.
So on my sheet, the most obvious one is join. You have to be a Trill to have that because it literally represents having a sibling.
Exactly. Where's races? And I'll open up the book to that
I was
directly.
going to say, I'm going to pull up the book for that.
Yeah,
Do you have a PDF that you can display?
That's what I'm doing. Yep.
Oh, that's
and
beautiful.
it's page 109 if you need it, which is
Oh,
why
that's
it isn't on
beautiful.
my
That
sheet.
helps me right there. 109, go. For Trill? Specifically? Okay.
Yeah. And you'll have to zoom in on joined.
Joined. I can do
At
that.
the bottom.
It's the bottom one.
I'm
You
actually just trying to figure out how to zoom in.
By the nature of being Trill, you have to take one of those two traits
Really?
because it's
Really?
what Trill are.
You
That's an
I
answer.
don't think you have to take one of the two. I
Okay.
could be wrong, but the way the talents work is you can pick any talent in any book that you meet the prerequisite or the requirements for. So if you see here joined requirement, you must be a Trill to take this, and you have to have the GM's permission to take this talent after character creation. So you can take it at character creation if you're playing a Trill, but if you didn't take it at character creation, you can't just say at some point when you get a new talent, I want to be joined. The GM has to green light it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay? And then each talent is essentially a special rule that applies to your character. And if you read here on joined, basically you have a symbiont that has a lot of lifetimes with other hosts. And so you gain a trait with the name symbiont. And there's a rule in here about once per mission, you can declare that a former host has expertise in a relevant skill, and you gain a single focus for the remainder of that scene.
Okay.
So I can magic myself to know this focus all of a sudden that I didn't have before. Guy, can you pull up page 137?
137. Here we go.
All right, pick one. Who cares? Pick.
Let's do push the limits.
Sure.
Sounds good.
So, in order to take the talent push the limits, your character has to have a discipline in con of 4 or higher. But if you have that talent, whenever you try a task that involves your con discipline, you can reduce the difficulty by 1. So if I'm the GM and I say, okay, well, you're trying to fly the ship through the asteroid belt, and that's a difficulty 3 task, you go, well, I have pushed the limits, so that's only a difficulty 2 task now.
Oh, okay.
Every talent is basically a manipulation of the rules.
Right. It's a specific manipulation of the rules. But
And-
again, this is up to the player to remind the GM, because the GM's not going to well, I guess I should say some GMs remember all of this stuff. There's no way I'm going to remember all of these different things.
A lot of talents also involve manipulating momentum. They allow you to put extra momentum in the pool or
Like
spend
Starship
momentum in a
Expert.
new way or things like that.
Right.
The talents is probably the most rules heavy specific part in my observation of the whole system.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Like it's the most traditionally kind of Dungeons and Dragons-y type of rules where it's like this does this specific thing and costs this much to do.
Okay.
The nice thing is your character starts out with 4 talents, and it's very rare that you add more than 4. You can swap them out, but it takes quite a while of gaining experience. They don't use that term, but to get you to where you have more than 4 talents. And so you have to know your character's 4 special rules.
Okay.
And honestly, there's the place on the character sheet only gives you enough room to write the names.
Yeah.
But I make character sheets where I put the name and then the page reference. And then I will usually just type up that talent on a Word document and attach it to the back of my character sheet.
Okay.
And it depends on how much skill you have in that kind of stuff. I actually just remove that entire section and then retype them in, copying them in straight from the book.
Because Guy is smart enough to use the appropriate software to rebuild the character
To
sheet,
rebuild the character
and
sheet,
Joe is not.
which is totally
neither is
fine.
V. V isn't either, so it's fine.
Okay, what else do we need to talk about? We need to talk about stress. Can
Stress.
you give me the character sheet back?
I can.
All right, leave it right there. That's perfect. Every character has a statistic called stress, and it is calculated based on your fitness plus your security.
Okay.
And these character sheets have, if you recall, your fitness cannot be higher than 12, and your security cannot be higher than 5. So if you notice, the character sheet has 17 boxes of stress because that's the most stress a character could ever have is 17. And what we've done is we've just gone at the end of the stress and we've marked off each stress that Luna's character doesn't have. So Luna's fitness is 8, her security is 2, she has 10 stress. 6, 7, 8, 9. We've checked one too many boxes on Luna's character sheet. And then when you take damage, the damage is stress. So we roll for damage. I guess we need to talk about how to roll for damage.
That's these
Okay.
guys.
Yep. We roll for damage and we say Luna took 2 damage. She marks off the first 2 stress boxes. That's all she does. And it doesn't matter if this is damage because she hasn't eaten in 3 days, or if this is damage because she just had to run a marathon, or if this is damage because she got punched in the face, or if this is damage because I just shoved a batleth through her stomach.
Oh, yep.
It's
Yep.
all the
right.
same. When she runs out of stress, when there are no empty boxes, her character becomes disabled, unable to play. They're down. They may or may not be dead. They may or may not have specific injuries, but she is effectively unconscious.
Okay. Okay.
Some
Excellent.
characters, like Tassara, my character, is a security officer. She has a ton of boxes of stress. So even though in the middle of a fight, the Cardassian agent reaches up and breaks both of her arms, she still had the ability to start kicking at him with her legs. Because she's a security officer, a Vulcan, and she's got a ton of stress that she could take. So what would normally have just totally wiped out Luna's character just irritated Tassara. She just got mad. Hello, rebellious pastry. It's good to see you on the show.
I like that name, Rebellious Pastry.
Right?
I like that too.
I do too. Rebellious Pastry is joining us from YouTube. So for those of you on Facebook, you won't be seeing this individual. But that's all right, fam. You're still joining us. We're good. So
How about talking about damage?
damage? You mean like stress damage and damage
Stress
things?
damage, rolling effects.
Yep.
Does anybody have a camera that they can set up to look at dice as they're rolling?
Yes,
Okay, can you do that? And do you have some Star Trek effects dice?
I do not have any Star Trek dice, unfortunately.
Okay, I will set something up unless someone else can do better.
I believe we've met you in real life once too. I believe we discussed this last time, so I'm glad you can join us this time. Yes. Well, there are new people in our game at this point in time, so it's all good. I would say normally, just tell me what your name is, but of course I won't remember your name because I don't remember Brent's name half the time, and he's been with every show ever. And I'm still like, who are you?
Is Brent the one who is unable to talk?
I can talk. I just keep myself muted until I need to.
Oh, well, that's all right. I think that's probably the wiser individual. I find that I like to talk until I'm in trouble. It's really the best way.
Sadly, you and me, V, you and me,
Yeah.
we're the
Yep.
same
And
style of folk.
And
Yeah.
me.
My mouth
Yeah.
has gotten me into far more trouble.
Brent is clearly our wallflower, along with Hunter.
Which is all right. We need those people because those are the people that get us out of trouble. Once we have gone in there and gotten into trouble, it's Brent that grabs us and pulls us out.
Or get us impregnated. It's hard to say.
Hard to tell.
That was the quiet one. I don't know where I put my dice after I moved my Star Trek dice. I swear I had them out, but I don't know where they are. Can
Sorry.
someone
You
else
have
with Star
them,
Trek
guys?
dice put their camera on your dice?
I can't roll. I mean, I've got an auxiliary camera, but it's on my May line behind me, and that's at an angle, so the dice will roll right off. Of it.
Hold on. Let me get my dice. What do I need to throw?
Do you have some of those Star Trek dice that are the D6s with the stars on them?
The answer is no, but I do have a million D6s.
Well,
Now,
yeah, but
what-
these are specialized,
I
so you can
think-
kind of see that the dice have special.
Oh, those are exploding dice. Got it.
Not exactly, but I think honestly, if you just show them the sides, we should be sufficient because we're just kind of trying to show how.
Yeah,
this
what I'll
works.
do is, Joe, I'll roll the dice and then hold them to the camera as they rolled.
Okay, and you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Google Images and put in Modiphius STA dice. And,
Well, no, I mean, like I said, I could just roll these dice and then hold them up.
Okay.
So that probably will work better, I think. I mean, because we could do that, but I don't think there's a die roller for it. Is there a die roller for it?
The die roller we have in Discord does that, but it doesn't show the sides. It just tells you what it did.
Right. Well, because that makes sense, because it's hard to... First of all, Joe, I'll put all the 3 possible options up and hold them to the screen and to the camera.
That's a good idea. Well, you know what? It's a little blurry, though.
It'll catch on in a sec. It does. There we go.
Put yours on the main.
There we go. Now that it's main, you can figure it out.
So we
camera.
basically have, for those who can't see, a chevron, a single star, a double star, and then some sides that just look like a bunch of dots that aren't anything, which he's not showing right now.
Right, but I can try to. But every time I do, it defocuses.
Yeah.
There we go.
So the nil result is this one that just looks like a not a regular star
Right.
field.
Guy, can
Wait.
you put up what I'm sharing? And then you
Yep.
don't have to hold the dice?
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
So these are the effect dice, and as we are playing, if you use a weapon or you fire Starship's weapons or you use a personal weapon like a hand phaser or a batleth, or you punch someone in the face, or anything that is going to do damage, essentially, you roll these. Now, if you don't want to spend the money and buy Modiphius' special dice, they do have a conversion where you can use a normal D6 and a 1 equals this side and a 2 equals that side. And they have different things. So basically, if you look at the die that's on top of the others, you see a face that has 1 big star at the very top that's facing upward. That is the equivalent of you've done 1 damage.
Okay.
The side that's on the side facing us, that you see 2 giant stars, that means you've done 2 damage. That's pretty simple. Look at the die that is on the farthest to the right and up high. That doesn't have any big stars. It just has a field of small stars.
Yeah.
That's a 0.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you see the dice that have the Star Trek chevron delta in shapes. That's an effect.
Okay.
And so basically you have one side that does 1 damage, one side that does 2 damage, 2 sides that do 0 damage, and 2 sides that do an effect. And what is an effect is up to the GM. It could be something like, okay, you're going to punch the Klingon in the face, and you rolled 2 damage and 1 effect. All right, well, you did 2 stress damage to the Klingon, and he falls over backwards. That's what the effect is. Or you punched him right in the eye, and he's blinded for 1 turn. That's what the effect is. Usually the effects are something that the GM will just narrate and make up on the spot. But there are some talents and things like that where the effects do specific things. Also, an effect always counts as 1 damage. So can we switch now to Guy's screen? And Guy, you put up a roll for us, 3, 4, or 5 dice, and we'll count off how much damage was done.
Yep. I've got only 3 dice, so we
That's
can only
fine.
do 3. This roll, hang on, I'm going to hold it properly. Goes like this. And
All
it'll
right, so
focus
we
in.
have done 3 damage because the 1 giant star gives us 1 damage, and each effect, and you know what, I'm sorry, it's a slight incorrection. Each effect can either be an effect or 1 damage. It's the
That's the GM's choice.
right.
Okay.
And you really don't get more than 1 effect. So with this roll, my options as a GM is either 2 damage and 1 effect or 3 damage.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense.
What else do we need to talk about before we get into values and determination?
I think values might be the time now, because after that, the thing we had on the docket was ships.
And let's talk about ships before we do values.
Okay.
Guy, can you pull up a ship character sheet?
I certainly can, but it'll take me a second. Give me just a second.
And I'm going to get ready to roll some dice. We may switch back and forth between the two of them.
Because it's in a different folder. Games in progress.
So, just to give a little background on this before Joe goes into this, ships are in their own way a character in this sort of show RPG. They have character sheets, and they can also, like, players can buy things for a ship instead of for themselves. And here's the character sheet. Go into that. And then you can use the ships to enhance yourself, both as a tool and as its own entity, kind of.
Okay, so like Luna said, the ships are essentially treated like characters. And what we're looking at on screen now is the ship that Tessera will be in command of shortly. Who's your XO, Tessera? It's an NPC.
It's an NPC.
You're the only player character that's going to be on that ship.
Right.
So, and it's formatted very much like the player character's character sheet. You got that top section that gives you the name and where they're from, blah, 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 blah. What we need to focus on is systems and departments. Now, you'll notice that they also have talents, which work more or less the same way as talents for player characters, for people. But essentially, systems are your attributes for the ship, and departments are your disciplines for the ship. And they run in very similar ranges. If I am using the ship to do something, like instead of trying to shoot a phaser that's in my hand at the Klingons, I'm using the USS QSTA to fire the QSTA's phasers at the Klingons ship, we're going to use the character's die roll for the task and the ship. So my character is going to use, let's just say, control and security is what the GM calls for. So I make my normal task roll using control and security, and then we make another roll using the ship with a third die. It automatically gets you a third die. The ship is only good for one die. But then the ship, we're going to use weapons plus security. So my 2 dice that I rolled for the character are based on the character's attributes and values and that target number. And then we roll 1 die for the ship, weapons of 8, security of 4. My target number on that die is 12. So now let's go to the roll dice screen, if you would, please. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong thing.
No, that was. Oh, that was. I was switching screens there too while we were at it. Mostly because I was like, we could bring up, let's say, Tessara's character, right?
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Right.
So let's say that Tessara is going to be firing the Cuestas phasers. So what is Tessara's control?
Her control is 12, and her
And her-
security is 5.
And the
Which
target
gives-
number, therefore, 12 plus 5 is
17.
17.
Okay. So
I'll roll 2 dice for that, and we'll see what happens there. I got a 9 and a 10, so 2 successes.
all right, and now we're going to roll. So Tessara has generated 2 successes as Tessara. And now we're going to roll 1 die for the ship.
For weapons and security, rolling 1 more die, which was a failure. It was an 18.
So we end up on our firing the Cuestas phasers task with 2 total successes. And that's all there is to using ships. It's very simple.
And so all we do is, as GMs, instead of having the sort of the baseline for a relatively normal but not too difficult task is 2 for a character. For ships, we tend to go for a 3 success. So 3 is really the hard success. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I didn't realize I'd muted. I was like, yeah, yes, and then yeah, I think I get it. I think so. Yeah.
This is a newer thing for all of us because we've only recently started using ship character sheets. So you'll be
Yeah.
learning with all of us.
Okay.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is, prior to this, Joe was in command of the ship, and the rest of us just kind of hung out a lot.
We were 1 ship, and we were the bridge crew, so there was only 1 ship to have a character sheet for. Although there were times where we had Richard had a ship for a long time that was separate in some
That's
early
true.
seasons.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
but
they
now
did
we're going to be a 4th ship task force. So every character is either a captain or a first officer at this point.
Yeah, it reminds me, I'm going to have to change my portrait.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's one of the key things here
Hey.
is that I change portraits all the time. But she's no longer in yellow. It's kind of a bummer, but because I liked her in yellow. It was like one of the few characters that was in yellow.
Yeah, Tessara did look good in yellow.
Yeah, she did. Although, to be fair, I think she looks pretty good in red, too.
I bet she will.
So, yeah. So
Wait a
that's-
minute. Why am I doing this the dumb way?
There we go. She looks pretty cool in red, too. Gotta give her props.
Oh, I like that with the whole background thing.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah.
That's her on the bridge of the QS, actually. So,
Sorry,
Oh,
though.
that's awesome.
I'm not paying to update my sheet quite yet, but we'll see.
sorry, guys.
I'm going to advertise because Guy won't. He does commissions for these, and they're fabulous, and he deserves every penny that he charges, and
Thank you
they're
very much.
amazing.
Guy,
there-
I'm going to make a new share screen. Will you share what I'm putting up, please?
I will.
Luna, does he have a website?
I believe he does. I think it's GS Davis Art, but I could be wrong.
It is. It's
Does he have-
gsdavisart.com.
Does he have a Facebook?
GS Davis Art.
Awesome.
I am branded. I am totally branded. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere, just as GS Davis Art.
See, we knew you wouldn't advertise yourself, so we had to do it for you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
This is Guy's work, and it's brilliant. And it is the cast picture from last season. And the things that he has done here, as you get to know these characters, they are just portrayed so perfectly with their personalities in these pictures. It's just lovely. And this right here is Richard's character, Captain Core. This is my character, Commodore Hashimoto. This is Hunter's character, Vinka, who was our diplomatic officer that ended up pregnant. This is Chelsea's character, Liliana Lupine. You'll notice that she looks rather annoyed.
Is she the telepath who hates everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Guy's character, Tessera. This is Luna's character. This was Misaf.
No, that's Solarina. I never actually paid for Misaf.
Oh,
Yeah.
this
This is Zolarina. This is her.
that's the
character.
new Zolarina.
Yeah.
You're right. And then Nate's character, Thushlos. And by the way, that is totally Nate's eyes and jawline.
Yeah,
100%.
I totally stole his jawline. It was very funny.
Yeah.
But I
if you
also
look-
am very proud of my first season phaser rifle, which was never shown. And so, yeah, it's a
Oh, this one here?
Dustbuster. It's a Dustbuster phaser rifle. Yeah, I was so
Yeah.
excited. I had to
Um,
work on that. I was like, I like that part.
I really like the little scanner doohickey, because seriously, in the commission I just described, it was like I went basically Tully's hair, and I went the dress style thing, and I went her holding some kind of scanner, and that's what he came up with.
I like it.
The
Yeah.
body language of all of these characters just tells you so much about them.
Well, it's good to know the characters. That helps. I mean, we played for a long, long, long time
Yes.
before we
yes,
got
we
to
have.
this, and so, and so I was. It's more of that, and like Tessara is easy because of course she's my character, so I know everything about her. But like all these other characters, I've just known forever. Lupine has been with Tessera and Hashimoto probably the longest in this show or in this
Yeah.
series.
The three people that started with season 1, session 1, there were other players, but the three that are still around is me, Guy, and Chelsea. And we're playing the original characters, Hashimoto, Tessera, and Lupine.
Yeah, these were FASA characters originally. So we were in a completely different game system when we started this, which is kind of also an interesting side story to go into if we ever wanted to do that. Because I actually have, like, Tessara was in a different outfit in the very beginning.
Yeah, your original character sheet had her in a monster maroon.
Yep.
And that's an interesting note, just historically. If you go on to Memory Alpha and you research when they changed from the monster maroon uniform to the one you see these guys in, we're actually game time before that transition occurs.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So we
so
should
there's
be
a
in
different
monster
change.
maroon still. But what
Yeah.
we've written is we're operating out of the Shackleton Expanse, and Starfleet has put together these new uniforms as a trial period for the Shackleton Expanse, which is why we're in them a few years before the rest of Starfleet's in them.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. That's a really
That's
cool
your original Tessera.
Yeah, that's what she originally looked like. I'm broadcasting, you know that, right? You
Oh,
didn't know that.
sorry, I just closed it. I apologize.
No. My kid just came in here.
Okay,
It's like, be aware I'm broadcasting.
gotcha. All right. Well, shall we talk then about advancements and experience first, or?
I think maybe this is when we should go into values, because advancement does have to do with being able to switch that out.
Fair enough. All right. All right. So this is really weird. And is advancements the term that they use?
Are we talking about values or are we talking about advancements?
Oh, we're doing about values first.
which is
why
also
don't you
really,
talk
really
about values while I make some notes to get ready to talk about advancement? If you
Okay.
so. Oh yeah, go
No,
ahead.
go
Ty.
ahead. Please do.
Values are, and rules wise, this is where Guy's going to need to come in. But values systematically are kind of the most, like, they're almost your sort of core background character-ness. And so functionally, you get to kind of use them to state how your character would feel about a scene in a lot of cases. They're why your character would be motivated or demotivated to do something. The way that the book talks about them is that it gives examples from quotes from the show about different people who have values. So, for example, the doctor from the original series might say something like, I can't, like, there's
Yeah.
nothing I can't do.
Right.
They're very much the core of the, like, kind of characterization of the character. But how they get used is weird, and I'll admit I'm a little nebulous on it.
So, to give an example, Dr. McCoy might have, damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, as a value. And what it really means is that he's grumpy and will constantly say that he can't do it, but he will. And he'll be able to do it, even though he will grump about it. Because he always does the, damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not an escalator, or whatever, right? Using Tessara, which is up on the screen right now, it says these are values that she gained from the character building, the character creation, from the book. Never eat someone else's guest bar. She's very much, she's isolated. She's an isolated person. She's not going to take anything from you. She doesn't want you taking anything from her. She grew up in a colony where food was a commodity to be traded. So she's very, very sensitive about that. What you plant now, you harvest later, means that when playing her character, she's constantly tactically thinking ahead. She's trying to set something into play right now that will be enacted down the road. So she's the kind of character that will say, Hashimoto is going to beam down to the planet. Very well, I'm going to put this patch of communication whatever on the back of his uniform so that I can track him, just in case he gets captured by the bad guys. That's her thinking ahead.
Because Hashimoto's not going to do anything stupid that's going to get him captured by the bad guys.
There's a reason why these characters have stayed together for a long time. Anyway.
And to give an example of how this is very character specific, Zolarina has a very similar value in what it does, but it's written differently. I have one that says, always prepared, always vigilant, which is essentially the same thing of thinking ahead and getting benefit from it later. But the way it manifests is very character specific, which is why it's a different quote, as it were.
Well, and she got what you plant now, you harvest later because she was raised in an agricultural colony. And she was a farmer.
So I have a question. Just looking at what you've put up, I just, in making characters, not understanding the game, excuse all of my values. Yeah, thank you. It wasn't even a sneeze. I don't even know what that was. All of my values are very similar. So I think that because I was focusing on this character is going to be a diplomat, I sort of said that in 4 different ways. So before we start playing, should I go back through my values and
go ahead and fix them out.
And in the end, Dustin is lead GM. Dustin is the GM. We're just guest GMs. So in the end, you have to sell Dustin on being able to change.
And
but
sometimes he's willing to do it, and sometimes he isn't. And it's kind of interesting how that changes from time to time. But I think he'd be open to it.
Given that we haven't even played yet, it's probably fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
There also is a way in game to change your values, which we will come to in a little bit.
Yeah, because that's actually what happened next. I had a third value that was different than this one. I have tactical superiority, but that has become a tagline for this character because there was an episode of the show where she was in command, and the opposing forces had a ship that was much more powerful, and then at some point that ship lost power.
Okay.
And so she said, I demand your surrender. And the other person said, I won't surrender. Why would I surrender? And I said, I have tactical superiority.
Oh,
And that has become sort of her
it's her
trademark.
catchphrase now.
She has
Yeah.
said it multiple times.
She's now said it many times where she's had tactical superiority. Or she will say she doesn't have tactical superiority. And then, of course, she's got the classic Vulcan, I didn't lie, I exaggerated, which is extremely useful because Vulcans don't lie. But she will exaggerate, which kind of means that she's willing to lie for the purpose of the mission, in a way.
Lying by omission, yeah.
Right.
Right. Now, and the thing is, there's no list of values. You make up your own values for your character. You can find sample lists online. There's some samples in the rule book, but they can be just about anything that kind of guides your character's decision making. So I'm going to give you an example from Corin Core, Captain Richard's character, Captain Core. Two of his values, one is loyalty.
Okay.
And so when he is making a decision for that character, what is that character going to do? Loyalty will guide it. And he may be able to use this value. I'm going to talk about how they come into gameplay in mechanics in a little bit. If he's doing something that is either demonstrating his loyalty or doing the opposite, being disloyal.
I'm
Okay,
actually going
okay.
to step away for just a moment because my family's preparing to go to bed. I'm going to go talk to them for just a second, and then I'll be back. Okay?
Okay. While we're looking at Captain Core, leave no man behind is one of his big values. And that's a really important one when we come to game mechanics that I'm about to transition into, which if he is trying to rescue somebody and make sure we don't leave him behind, that's something that he can totally say, hey, I'm applying this value right now and get an in-game bonus. But on the other hand, if his character is forced to make a decision where he leaves someone behind, that's going to have a game mechanic effect of challenging his value. So before I move into how that works with the mechanics, are we good on values and what they mean and how do you pick them?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Brent?
Yep. I'm
Yeah?
good.
Okay. All right. I think Brent would speak up if he wasn't. All right. So they play in with a thing called determination. Every time you start a session, you have 1 point of determination. And you build determination by doing something that is in accordance with your value. If you want to, remember how I said you could spend determination to get another die?
Yeah.
So if you want to spend determination to get another die, you have to tie what you're doing at that moment in with a value. So Captain Core here is trying to rescue somebody and not leave them behind. And he can go, well, I have this value of leave no man behind, and I'm trying to rescue this guy. So my value applies. Therefore, I can spend a determination on this task to get another die.
Okay.
Okay? If he can't tie what he's doing to a value, he can't spend the determination at that time.
Okay.
Okay? He also doesn't, and actually this is a thing where the GM is able to say, well, I see you have that value. Do you want to spend determination? And he could say, no, I don't. I want to save it because it's his resource to manage.
Okay.
So if the GM says, are you spending determination? That's an option. You don't have to.
Okay.
Okay? How do you get more determination is by challenging your value. So if we say, okay, well, guess what, Captain Core, there's no way you can rescue this guy. And he goes, all right, I give up. I'm not going to rescue the guy. He has now challenged that value. That earns him a new point of determination that
Okay.
he can spend later. However, he has to cross out, leave no man behind on his character sheet, and that value does not exist until the end of this session. And then he
Okay.
has to rewrite it. He has to change his value to adapt to his new worldview after being forced to do something that violated his personal values.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
It's weird, and it can come up depending on how you write your values. It can come up all the time or almost never.
Right. I mean, that's part of what kind of, so, like every game system has a style to how they make you do a character and how you make, and so, like GURPS has a lot of advantages, disadvantages, and things like that are part of how you make the character. And this system's way of doing it is through these values.
Okay.
Hang on, guys.
All right, I think, should we move? Do we want to talk about values anymore? Is that clear? Determination, is that clear?
I think so. I think it'll make more sense when I start playing, but I think
Yes,
so.
it will.
Yeah, I think I understand what we're kind of getting around, if that makes sense.
When you go through the character creation section of the book, it has you build in the values at steps. So the first value comes in when you're building the where were you born, what planet are you on step.
Okay.
And so it then says add a value to your character sheet that sort of represents your home world, right? Which is why, and I noticed that when Richard built his character, he just put 4 values that were in there, but didn't follow necessarily how the character.
That's because at that time we were streamlining character creation.
Right, we didn't know at that point.
Yeah, and Mordifius didn't have the website. For anybody who's curious, we did this in the last session of this on air, but Mordifius has a website that actually takes you through the entire character creation process.
That was so
from
cool.
birth through essentially your first starship location, and has you write what talents you would get, what focuses, and what values you would get at each step in your life.
Okay.
So,
The character creation process basically role plays your character from birth until whatever the gameplay time starts.
Which is where you get the 4 values that came in with Tassara. This is from her childhood. This one's from her early career, or her career as being on the planet with wherever. And then this is from Starfleet. This is her first Starfleet value. And then later she gains 1 more value at the end of character creation, which comes from her MIDI cruise, from the just getting out there and kind of hanging out and doing the thing, So that's where these 4 come from. And I put her tactical superiority into what would have been her value that was there before for Starfleet.
because Tassara has at this point gone through the process of changing as a character, which is the next step we're going to start discussing in this tutorial. But she had a previous value that got challenged and replaced with I have tactical superiority. So,
and I forgot what I was going to say. Go on.
I was just going to say, I just suddenly realized, looking at Tassara and looking at the Cuesta, that the Cuesta may be old, but the Cuesta was built 4 years after she got married.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, there's that. My character is married and has had kids, and the kids have grown up and gone on to their own lives, and that's when she decided to join Starfleet.
that's just because Vulcans live forever.
They do. But it's funnier because the Lexington is ancient, or the Cuesta is ancient, because she's a rebuild of the USS Lexington, which was a sister ship of the Enterprise from the movies. And so she's a rebuild of that into this new class, and she got a new name, but she's ancient, because it's the refit was 2328, and she was built in 2275. She's coming up on 90 years old.
This is challenging Solarina to some extent, because I'm like, does Giraffe think you're a youngin? And Solarina thinks you're old.
Yes.
Yes, that is exactly what's happening. One of them thinks that she's just very young, and the other one thinks she's ancient.
Mhm.
I do want to throw something out there on character creation here. On page 124, there is a thing called Final Details. And to be honest, that is a cheat way, not cheat in the sense of dishonesty, but cheat in the sense of streamlining things, of making a character without going through the whole process. Is you can just go to Final Check and fill in whatever you want to fill in and make the math work. And so one of the things is when we started learning this game and we had to convert our characters from FASA characters to Modiphius characters, we just went to the Final Checks and just converted them. We just made choices of how, okay, I've got 56 points to split up between my attributes. Where do I want to put what where? Rather than using the character creation process.
However, for those of you listening or possibly watching the recorded version later, I cannot emphasize enough how much it is worth it to do the character creation process.
I was actually going to say
make
the
you-
exact same thing.
Yes.
It will take you from a 2-dimensional character to a 3-dimensional character. I mean that in like the sense of writing style. It is probably the most worthwhile character writing process I've ever done in a system.
It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
and the truth
worth
of the
the
matter
time.
is, do your first character that way, and then all the subsequent characters, once you've done it, you already know how it feels and what you're supposed to do. You can kind of do this little cheat way that Joe's talking about. But we think, I certainly agree with Luna. The first one, do it that way.
I if you're building a new character, go through the process, take the time. It's not that long, and it's worth it. If you're converting a character where you already know their background and their personality, that's when it's okay to cheat.
Yeah,
That's just my opinion.
you're just making Spock.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
And there are rules. I don't think we need to get into this, but this game does allow supporting characters, so you can make those guest star characters that are there. And there is a section on how to make supporting characters. They don't have all the same things that full player characters have, but it's very easy to make supporting characters. I don't think we should spend a lot of time going into it because it's very simple. You just read a paragraph of what to do, and it gives you a very quick way to make them. And that's one of the brilliant things about this game. Can you throw up the Starships character sheet, guy?
Yeah, give me just a sec here. I was pulling something off here and working on that. Let's put this.
The Starships have a statistic called crew support, and you'll find it on the right side of the page underneath launch bay. Right where he's circling, if you can see his mouse there.
Mhm.
In theory, crew support is how many supporting characters can you activate from that ship at a time before the ship can't do what it needs to do as a ship. I'll be honest, our game, we just kind of ignore crew support. And if you have a supporting character, we activate them and we don't count how many we've activated. But the game mechanic says if you're on the QESTA, you should not be able to activate more than 4 supporting characters at a time. And that's pretty simple. Anything else before we get into how we advance characters, how they gain an experience?
I do have a question. How many more phases of learning the game are there? Because I'm going to start forgetting this rapidly.
As far as I know, the last one to talk about is advancement.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're pretty much done after advancement.
Not that I'm not interested, but I'm like,
No, it's
oh
all
my
good.
God.
It's
Well,
information over.
I'm losing topics here. I don't know what's going on. Okay.
It's all good. The truth of the matter is this. One of the things that's great is this is recorded. We can always go back to it. But
Perfect.
2, more importantly, I think it's always good to just say what the rules are, and then when we come back to it and play, you'll be like, "That's right. We talked about determination. I remember
Okay.
that now."
Okay.
In all honesty, we've already gone over everything that you'll need to play your first game because advancement is something that's going to come later. So you are theoretically now ready to play.
Yeah.
Since this is now a tutorial that's being recorded, it's probably worth talking about how characters change.
Oh yeah,
So-
absolutely. No, I'm happy to go over the last one, but in my head I was like, is there another hour and a half of rules? Because I don't think I can remember the 2 hours of rules already. How
Yeah.
many more? I'm so worried.
That's why I made myself a cheat sheet.
That's
And
it.
if it helps you, great. And if not, make one that helps you.
I'm saving it because I mean, I don't have a cheat sheet, so
Yeah.
at least figure it out.
We are a Starship crew, and we are here to help remind you of these rules.
Fair enough. I mean, it's the Prime Directive. Well, no, we don't remind people of the rules. We just don't bother other people while we watch them, or something. Depending on what one you're watching. Sure.
If it's lower decks, we're Starfleet. We always get in there, cause a mess, and then don't go back and pick it up later.
Right.
I haven't seen this yet, but it sounds great.
Deep Space Nine.
That was this last episode, and it was like one of the most brilliant things ever. I'd never thought about that until Ensign Mariner said it. And then I was like, she's right. They go in there and screw up everything, and then they never go back to fix it.
Well, it
And it's
was
just-
Though they never go back on screen, but I think those are great hooks if you're running a game.
Well,
yeah.
and that's
Running a
exactly
class
what
where
that's
you
exactly
go
what the
back.
Cerritos was doing. Was
Yeah.
going back and fixing all the stupid stuff the Enterprise had started.
You
It
got to
was-
go back to the gangster planet and get McCoy's communicator that he left behind, and you got to go back to the planet with the apple and make sure the Valians are rebuilding their society. Those are all good hooks if you're a GM.
It was
playing.
so
It's
weird.
good hooks
to
for
go
lower decks
from-
too.
It was so bizarre to go from the Next Generation where Captain Picard would literally throw temper tantrums about the Prime Directive to DS9 where it's like, hi, I'm the captain who's also a god. Hello.
Yeah.
Welcome.
How you
I was
doing?
like,
What?
What happened to the Prime Directive? Oh, we don't care about that.
But
Oh.
sometimes it's fun because you watch people struggle with the Prime Directive, and they're going, "How do I solve this problem without violating the Prime Directive?"
Yeah.
I think
that's
you would really like Enterprise then, because it actually goes into how they developed that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of conversations about he's like, well, why don't we just go down there and give them medicine and stuff?
Yeah, they talk about that. And actually, the truth is, with Deep Space Nine, it's not a violation of the Prime Directive because the Bajorans are a protectorate.
I mean, that's the loophole they use. Yes.
Yep.
Well, you will never find the written text of the Prime Directive,
No.
and different shows interpret it different ways.
Well, I think
It's-
that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Don't write it down. That way it can be whatever you need it to be at any given time.
Plot-driven constitution. Yeah.
One of my in college, I majored for a while in cultural anthropology. So I think one of the reasons I like Next Generation is because of that infinite frustration of, but I want to touch it. You can't touch it.
Yeah.
But no, you're an anthropologist. You don't get to do that. But it's so cool. We know. Stop it. Okay.
You really will like Enterprise then, at least the first season, when they start talking about why that's important. I think
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, shall we go into character advancement?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right, so the term that they use is a milestone. And that is totally in line with this being about the story, not about the mechanics. And when you reach, there are 3 types of milestones. And basically, the GM kind of has a lot of control over how often milestones happen. Essentially, every time you conclude what would be an episode, an individual story, you can come to a milestone.
Okay.
And I'm maybe a little bit fuzzy on what guides the GM and when they give each milestone because we're really fast and loose with it. But, okay, so at the end of any adventure, a single episode, not a play session, but an episode, you get what's called a normal milestone.
Okay.
And there are 3 types, in case you're going, oh God, how many things do I have to remember? First of all, don't, because you can refer back to this when the time comes.
Perfect.
But a normal milestone is just an everyday little thing. And basically, there's a list on page 139 of the rule book that says what can you do with a normal milestone. And it's simple stuff like I can take 1 point out of one attribute and put it into another attribute. So I don't have more total attribute points. I've just moved it around.
Okay.
It's things like that. There's a list of about, you know what, I'll go through the list. If you challenged a value, that's how you, okay, so blah, blah, blah. You don't automatically get a milestone unless certain things happened in the mission. If you challenged a value, if you were injured, or if you used at least one value, then you can earn a milestone for that adventure. If you challenged a value, you have to rewrite the value. That's required.
Okay.
And then otherwise, you can choose 2 disciplines, take one of them and say -1, and another one and say +1. So you're moving 1 point. Tessera could take 1 point out of her command and put it into her science if she wanted to.
Okay.
You can also replace a focus with a normal milestone. I'm just going to swap out, get rid of one focus and replace it with a new one. Or you can take one of your supporting characters and do those things for that character instead.
Okay.
Okay? So let me give you an example. You'll see Hashimoto will talk from time to time. Tessera will talk from time to time about Mohinder Sankar. Okay, Tessera was the chief tactical officer, became the first officer. Mohinder Sankar is a supporting character that plays down the new tactical officer. So Tessera might want to put in, well, I don't need to do anything for the milestone for my character right now, but I want to fix up Mohinder Sankar a little bit.
Okay.
I could do that.
Okay.
Okay. You can also save a milestone for later. There's this little section of rules about, I don't want to do it right now, but I may need it down the road. That's okay. The next type is called a spotlight milestone. And that kind of occurs when your character is the star of that episode. And that's essentially the game master can say, okay, Luna, your character was the star of this episode. You get a spotlight milestone. Everybody else just gets a normal. Is how that works.
Okay.
And then there's a similar list of what you can do, and it's similar kinds of stuff. You can, instead of swapping a number from a discipline, you can swap it from an attribute because it's a spotlight. Or, and then you can always do all the same things for a normal milestone as well.
Okay.
Okay? The big one is called an arc milestone. That occurs when your character completes some major story arc related to your character. And that's where you can actually add new talents without having to take an old one away, or add, increase your attributes to a higher total. You know, that's if Tessera wants to bump her fitness, but not subtract from another attribute. That's when the arc milestones are when your character actually grows bigger.
Okay.
And that's really all there is to it. It's very simple.
If we want to show a fairly massive set of kind of milestone changes, we could show the arc change from Minba to Zarath, if you'd like.
Sure. Do you want to go over that?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have Mimba and Zarath.
Uh,
I may.
Well, and
actually have
in
them.
fairness, Mimba, well, yeah,
I mean, that was a pretty big arc change. So
that's a huge arc change. Almost going beyond what the rules are built to do because it's almost a new character.
it is. I did do the arc. I did it though as an arc change.
Oh, great. Well,
with some
walk through
extra stuff in there.
Okay.
Let me. If you don't have it.
I have Zolarina's.
So there's Zolarina Zarath. Do you have the previous Zolarina Minba, or do you have
No, I don't
one
think
next
I've
to you?
got well.
Look under Mimba.
Right, look under Mimba instead of That's
And while Guy is finding this character sheet, basically, those of you who are Trekkies probably know that Trills, the first name is the first name of the host. If they're joined, the host drops their family last name and picks up the symbiont's name as their last name. So this character is Zolarina Jorath, which means Zolarina is the host's first name, and Jorath is the name of the symbiont that's inside her.
Yeah, I've lost Mimba. Sorry.
I
I was able to recover Jorath, but not Mimba.
I'll find you a Mimba and send her to you
Very good.
as soon as I find my cursor.
Well, he does that. I'll give a quick overview for those who haven't been here on what happened and why this changed. There was an episode in which Minba, officially speaking, died. Unofficially, like off the record, because we had to do a lot of things off the record for this, got stuck in an orb, as in the orbs from Deep Space Nine. My symbiote is gone. I, out of character, played a different character for a season who then left, and I came back with a new one. This is incredibly not likely to happen. It is against all kinds of Trill rules, and I have some background story on how it accomplished and some people that I owe. So I'm sure that Dustin, our GM, is going to call in those favors on me. But in the process, I did the changes for basically a multitude of season milestones plus arc or plus spotlight and a couple of arc changes to the sheet. So that's why it's a good one to show the difference, because I did that process when I built this one. As soon as Joe has it, or I can send it over here.
If you can find it, send it, because I'm arguing with my thumb drive and losing.
Okay, no problem. It should be.
And you could just send it to me on Facebook, I think.
I don't have Facebook on here, but I can send it in Discord.
So much fun.
I had to kill Discord, so I'm not running Discord at this point because it was stealing all of my equipment to run Discord. So
That is a problem then.
yeah,
That's what happens with my mic or my camera. I can get mic connected on here if I'm on Discord, but I cannot do my camera.
Yeah, I had to kill it all the way out, otherwise it would not let me have camera.
Okay. In that case, can I just email it to you?
Yeah, hang on.
Oh, so much fur.
In which case,
It's in private.
okay.
So while you guys are working on that, in order to kind of just become more familiar, I was going to try making just another character kind of for fun. So what were the books we decided we were using? Core. What were the other ones you guys said last time when we made a character?
So
I think it was kind of everything except Delta Quadrant and the newer stuff, but still.
yeah, it shouldn't be Delta or Gamma
And there's a new Klingon book out there. I'm sure
nor
that
Klingon.
you
Right.
can't use that, I would assume.
Okay.
But anything else that they produced, you can go ahead and play with.
Okay, so just no Gamma or Delta.
Yes. Now, one of the things, though, to think about is when you pick a race, it says which era the race is allowed in.
Mm-hmm.
And we are 20 years before Next Generation and about 50 years after TOS. So if it is something that is not allowed in TOS, you may want to talk to Dustin and see if it's allowed 20 years before Next Generation. And if it's if it's a race that's not allowed in TOS or Next Generation, then it probably is not allowed right now.
I'm gonna rebuild the same character. So
Okay.
yeah, so it should be because I'm assuming the half Betazoid was fine, right?
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
So I just kind of, now that I know the process a little better, I think I'm going to go through again and like figure out how that works.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how long have we been doing this? We're 2.5 hours into this. Do we want to do some play testing or do we want to call it? I'm good either way.
I think we should probably call it at this point. I've got to do some. I'm noticing some emails since I loaded up my email. Some emails coming in from my kid's teacher that I'm going to have to follow up on.
Uh-oh.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. Well,
he's having problems with some of the functions of the Zoom meetings and stuff like that. So, but we can do these two while we're here. I did get these two, so I'm going to add them to my list of stuff because that's actually good. I'm glad that you did that. I can these now to here. Did it do both? That's the question. Or did it? No, it didn't. There we go. There we go. Okay.
I guess I should probably have forwarded that to Joe too, since he keeps the archives of everything.
Yeah, you would think I would have it, but somehow I've misplaced it. I'd appreciate it if you send it to me.
Can you put your email into the private too?
Yeah.
Okay, but I can, for the moment, bring up both of them as they were. Okay, I've got both of them now, and so we can now, I will share that screen. And we've got Solarina, Mimba, and we've got Jorath. Okay, there we go.
Do you have a way of separating these so they're side by side?
Maybe, or maybe not. I don't even know
No.
where it went. Where did you put it?
Or
Goofy
not,
computer.
okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, some things that you'll see that
I should do
Dave-
these the other direction. Hang on.
Okay.
Because this is the first one, and
Yeah.
this is the second one. And like all humans that are from our particular culture tend to read this direction. So, though not all humans read this direction. Interestingly.
So
There we
as
go.
you can see on Minba, who also has the prior to being joined name of Gabriel Benjol, but that's beside the point. Never played as that one. I have, for example, in the focuses area, a lot of the same ones, but I have switched out some. So that would be a minor story arc change. So for example, I've retained xenoanthropology and history, but psychology has been replaced with temporal physics. Some of this largely was based on the fact that my justification for some of these focus changes was one, that certain things weren't coming up in game as much, but also in the fact that I switched an entire set of memories out, essentially by switching out a symbiont. So this symbiont Giraffe has temporal physics knowledge that Minba didn't. Minba had psychology, so that was lost and this was gained. Similarly, as you'll see, I'm still joined. I still have technical expertise. Those were all things that were true with Zolarina. So none of those have changed. I still have In the Nick of Time, because that's just kind of who she is as a person, is a very last minute person, which is also why always prepared, always vigilant is still a value.
Okay.
But temporal mechanic is something that I gained, and I gained it as an additional talent when Giraffe was joined with me.
Okay.
Because Giraffe is a temporal mechanic, and that is a huge story arc thing. So it actually gets to be something added to the sheet as opposed to just switched out.
Okay.
So those are some functional things. There are a few places where you can see previously I had a lower attribute in medicine, and now I have higher attribute in engineering. So those kind of moved around through a process of a lot of things, like just not having used medicine, but having needed to do more engineering because we lost our engineers. So I learned that more and wasn't practicing medicine. So that moved out. That was actually part of Zolarina Minba's changes prior to changing Giraffe. So these are ways you can see 80% of the character sheet is the same, but there are things that changed because the story caused them to change.
I I would feel like though a lot of this is probably also a change in character that was a definite arc change.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. This had an arc change on it,
Yeah,
and
this
that's
is
why I
a
wanted
major
to.
arc change. So
But you can see there were minor changes from medicine moving to engineering. That was actually like a slow change over multiple months when we lost our engineer. Whereas things like adding temporal mechanic, that's the arc change.
Okay.
So
Okay.
hopefully that's somewhat clearer.
I think so.
And yeah, if any of the people listening out in the seats have questions, I don't actually know that we have anybody on right now.
we have 2 viewers.
Oh.
So there are still some people watching, which is all right. But I also feel like we are coming to the end now. We've shown kind of how a character can be born, and grow, and die. We've kind of covered all of the arcs.
Yeah, don't die in character. It's a really bad idea. It does become a major arc.
I did have one thing that I thought was kind of clever. That's the original character for Tassara. That's her. That's her.
Oh, that's awesome.
FASA
Aw.
sheet. I always
How long
thought
ago was that? What year was that?
2017, 2016. Was it
Oh,
16?
okay.
I'd have to look, but that sounds about right.
I believe it was 16. Yep, it was September of 2016.
Oh, and you have the warp drive explanation on there. That's cool.
Yep, because that was complicated.
I spend a lot of my time with that chart.
I know you do. You still spend a lot of time with that chart.
Yes, I do.
But yeah, this is what her original character sheet looked like for all of us who are kind of curious. So there you go.
A lot more numbers on that.
Yeah, that's a crunchier system. But we were literally playing the old FASA system that was invented in like 1986 or 87, something like that. So
It was. I think it was even earlier. I think it was early '80s.
it might have been even 82 or 83.
Their last update that they published for that game was the upgrade to the first season of Next Generation. That
Which
game
would have been
literally
87.
died between first and seasons of Next Generation.
That's right. I remember that update. So
Yeah.
that was it. You're right. That first season was it. That was all we had. And then we never got anything else. So that was 87. So that would be the end of the FASA game. So the FASA game was dead by 1987.
Yeah.
So we were playing in a system that was already dead in 1987.
It was already 30-year-old system when we started this game, almost 30 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
30 years out of print when we started this game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
luckily
pretty-
Dustin had all the books, and I have a whole bunch of them now scanned. Because it's nostalgia for me. We played the FASA game when I was in junior high.
Me too.
And so
yeah.
that was
And I love the FASA game, and I love Modifius 2D20 as well. And it actually wasn't that hard to convert from one to the other.
I agree. So that works. So anyway, I just figured that was a good little piece of nostalgia. We've been playing the same character for now 4 years almost. She's had her 4th birthday.
Yeah, she was a. Did she start out as a commander or a lieutenant commander?
She started out as a commander and stayed there for a very, very well. I mean, effectively until this
Until season 9.
until season 9 when she was promoted to captain. I kind of feel like she should have been a lieutenant commander, and I if I had known she was going to have this long of a life, I probably would have petitioned for her to be lieutenant commander.
Dustin set it up so that all the player characters were full commanders, so that it was even, and there wasn't a rank structure other than just having the captain. Which I get. There's a lot of wisdom in that.
There is, but it meant that she didn't get she was the Harry Kim of our. Everybody was Harry Kim. Nobody got a promotion.
Yeah, but I think that plays into the story because Hashimoto wants to promote her to captain. She should be a captain. She's got the experience. She's going to be dynamite. But I'm also, gosh, I need her.
Right.
And then what else is holding back with Starfleet? But
Well,
now she's a captain.
I mean, we've written in a lot, or Dustin and you guys have written in a lot of interesting politics that could have played as an effect into that.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to playing the game with you guys and getting involved in this. This is going to be a lot of fun, I think. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate Brent hanging out here this entire time.
Hopefully, we didn't bore you to death.
No,
No, I
I'm
think
gonna
he was
play it,
actually.
it's just- I until I play it, I don't learn it.
Location.
I totally get it. But the big thing, there were. I feel like there was two good reasons for this. One, it was nice for Joe to go over the rules with me, since we're both going to be role playing this, and I've already got the setup going to be the GM on this. It was nice to know that I don't sit there and go, okay, roll initiative, everybody, and then have Joe go, there's no initiative, and me go, oh yeah, don't roll initiative, everybody. So it was useful to have him so that I wouldn't make some idiotic, stupid mistake. It was also good to go over all the rules so that we can record it and look back on it if we ever need to. That's always useful. And so, so even if you don't remember anything, don't worry about it. It's totally cool.
It'll all come back when we start playing, and it'll all make sense when we start playing. And then we're so fast and loose with the rules anyway that if it doesn't, no one will ever know.
Yep. You're like, I roll a bunch of dice. Okay.
I'll be honest, I didn't think I knew the rules until we just went over them, and then I was like, oh, I guess I do kind of know some of that
I
stuff.
think all of us have sort of learned the rules by osmosis.
Yeah.
We had to make a mid-course correction at some point in time because we had been playing the game wrong for a while. And it's just because we didn't understand the rule book, and we only had one rule book. The Modiphius system came out in 2017, late
And that made it a lot
2017.
easier. Yeah.
So we'd already been 1 year in on these characters. And so then we were like, let's change them all over. And we were all like, okay. And then we did, and then we only had one rule book for a while there. And then they finally started putting supplement books out, and we were like, oh, crap. With all these supplement books, we realized we did it wrong. So we had to go back and had to redo our characters. So that's where we had, like, I've got various versions of her with different, just like you were just talking about V, I've got a version of her with all of her focuses that are screwed up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because, not focuses, talent, values. The values are all screwed up. And it's because of the same thing. It was like, value 1, kill everybody. Value 2, kill everybody. Value 3, kill everybody. And I'm like, then I realized that wasn't a very, she was just a security officer. Just goes around and shoots people. And I'm like, that's not a very deep character. There's no depth to that.
Yeah. On the bright side, and this is a nice thing about the values system, if it's written really badly, you can just challenge them pretty quickly and get them switched out. If you feel like, hey, this doesn't feel like a 3-dimensional character, but I'm stuck with it. Just make sure you're in a situation where...
If you can't think of a way to challenge your value, Dustin is a brilliant GM. And if you talk to him offline and say, hey, Dustin, I screwed up on my value, I really need to challenge it, he will create a storyline that allows you to challenge that value because he's a damn genius.
Right. He does that very well.
Yeah.
And so he will be more than happy to give you an altering thing. Usually, I'm pretty good at rolling with the punches as well, but I'm very nervous about GMing this first game.
Dude, you're going to kick butt.
So, well, thank you very much. So I've, listed everything out so that I can make sure I don't screw something up. Because I need to spend the first game or so just remembering that, oh, that's right, we got to do momentum. Oh, that's right, we got threat.
Come
I
on.
got to remember all
We
those
didn't
pieces.
spend the first season doing that. It's
Right.
fine.
I know.
It wasn't till Dustin got his Borg cube and then read his Borg cube that we actually realized that it was
We realized that we weren't doing it right.
So
And the only reason I've got this down is because I ran a session of this for another group, and I went, oh, crap, I have to actually learn the rules now.
I was actually kind of hoping I would have done that by now, but I haven't. My other
You'll
game,
surprise yourself.
Yeah,
So
should be fine.
if someone's willing to, after the stream is over, help me a little bit with the Modiphius Creator. I don't know what I did wrong, but for some reason, Betazoids aren't showing up at all, and I don't know if I'm just selecting the wrong books or age or...
Yeah, it shouldn't be in TOS age. You'll have to be in TNG era for it.
Yeah, and that's what's... I literally went in and I did select all after I couldn't get it to work. And I clicked both centuries.
We'll
Didn't show
definitely do an after thing. Like,
Yeah, what we'll do
That's
is
what I mean, like,
we're going
what-
ahead and we'll
yeah,
wrap
once
the
we're done
show.
with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go on ahead and we'll wrap the show for all of you guys who are watching, and then we'll just go on ahead and do a little after group. So for all of you who are with me on the show right now, hold on. Don't go anywhere. Let me roll the end credits and stop the stream. For those of you that are joining us out there, thank you very much for joining us, and we will start this game at some point when we can get Chelsea back in here. I have to figure out what to do
In
with Chelsea.
theory, that's 2 weeks from today.
In theory, that's 2 weeks from today.
I hope so.
In the meantime, I've been Guy, and this is Geek Tank, and I'll see you later. Bye.